Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Today is March 6th. Welcome to the bill hearings of the Ways and Means Committee. First, we have House Bill 1359, a local Charles County bill, and you have someone you'd like to bring up for questions. That is perfectly fine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, members, colleagues of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm Delegate Edith Patterson, representing the District 28 legislation regarding our support for House Bill 1359. It's a Charles County student bus transportation providers bill, provider displacement. This legislation supports the Charles County School Bus Contractors Association, which includes 24 small local businesses, predominantly women and minority-owned, that operate 315 buses, employ more than 400 drivers, attendants, and support staff, and serve more than 28,000 K-12 students and their families. In September of 2024, last year, their proposed legislation, fair notification legislation, was presented to the Charles County Board of Commissioners for consideration. This legislation was approved by the county commissioners and moved forward to the Charles County Legislative Delegation. House Bill 1359 is being sponsored by the Charles County delegation because of their support, or our support. As a lifelong educator in Charles County and I was a former member and chair of the Charles County Board of Education, I have known many of these families who own the 24 student bus companies, also referred to as contractors. I've known them for decades and have watched them grow and serve the county and the school system in efficient ways, employing safe transportation. Many of these businesses have ownership that spans 2 to 3 family generations. These are generational small businesses, and this is all that they do so that the school system can focus on learning and student achievement and equity. House Bill 1359 specifically addresses the requirement for the Charles County Public Schools to give a notice of displacement to our Charles County bus contractors and to the public should the school system decide to handle student transportation in another way besides outsourcing to these companies. Also, as amended, this bill ensures fair notification of at least 6 years before termination results in the displacement of a contractor. Please note the bill includes provisions for non-performance, as does their contract, so that this is not an issue here. Why is it critical? Why is it important? All bus contractors purchase and assume personal debt for their buses over a 6-year or longer period of time with the banks. They go into debt at $150,000 per bus with reimbursement over several years by the school system. Over the past 4 years, Charles County Public Schools significantly increased its own bus fleet from 22 to 69, making it publicly known that they plan to bring services in-house at some time in the future, but they have not been transparent with the plans. This has raised major concerns with the 24 bus contractors. This bill allows notice and time to plan for the future, not only for the contractors, but for their 400 employees. Contrary to opponent letters, the requested 6-year notice aligns with neighboring counties that operate by way of school bus contractors. Our neighbors, Calvert and St. Mary's, have 12-year contracts, with Calvert County renewing at the 6th year, as well as non-performance clauses. A similar bill was passed into legislation in 2017 requiring notice to be given to Charles County trash collectors. This is a similar situation. of large personal financial investments and a lack of partnership and goodwill. A school bus, once purchased, can only be used to transport school students. We had a work group prior legislation, which helped us or offered us a resolution. However, the contractors have never been able to negotiate any job security in their contract, and this is why it is landed here today. This bill has the support of the Maryland School Bus Contractors Association, the Charles County Board of Commissioners, and its president, Steve Nelson, and the Charles County Chamber of Commerce and parents, along with Amalgamated Transit Unit Local 689. House Bill 1539 provides displacement notice to the contractors and to the public. Such notice to small local businesses that have diligently served Charles County for 100 years is a matter of fairness and equity and good business practice. I respectfully ask for a favorable vote, House Bill 1539. And I also have one of the president of the Charles County Bus Contractors Association here to answer questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Patterson. Are there any questions from the committee? Questions? Okay, Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, and thank you, Delegate Patterson, for bringing this bill. So I'm trying to understand, we really couldn't dismiss a company without giving them 10 years notice under this bill. Is that a good summary of it, or is that a poor summary of it?
It's been amended. It is 6 years, not 10 years.
Okay.
A 6-year notification
All right.
of displacement.
And you changed from 10 to 6 because you thought that was more reasonable?
Excuse me?
You changed from 10 to 6 because you felt like that was more reasonable?
It was more of a compromise.
Okay, thanks.
In terms of some of the persons who offered favorable with amendments, and that was one of the amendments.
So I don't have oral testimony, but I see MABE and PAZAM and even AFSCME are unfavorable on this bill. I'm guessing that has something to do with hiring people and that sort of thing.
AFSCME represents the bus contractors for the school system. The bus contractors who are with private companies are not part of the AFSCME group. We just want equity, whereas the contractors, the bus drivers, contractors with the school system have a separate system. This is not the case with our drivers, and so again, it is for displacement, should that occur, and the courtesy to say, if you purchase a $150,000 bus, at least be given the courtesy of saying, we're going to take over your route in X number of years. But to have it not disclosed is a problem for us.
Yeah, I gather you're here to answer questions, so I think the chair will let you.
Yes.
Just one thing to add, the buses we purchase are Charles County specifically spec buses. So when I put my home on the line for 6 years to purchase a bus, the 6 years falls right in line with our financing period. Like right now, I have a year left on my contract. I purchased $1.4 million in buses this year. So it's kind of, you have a lot on the line. We have to, with our local banks, we have to personally guarantee these loans. And I think it's a matter of fairness to have that kind of protection of notice so we can get our finances in line and protect our homes.
Thank you. Is it sort of a mixed delivery system? There are actual Charles County school system buses in addition to the privates, or is the entire bus system privately hired in Charles County?
In Charles County, it's a combination of, as I mentioned before, several years ago, there were 22 buses that were owned by Charles County, and in a few years, the number has escalated to 69 buses.
Great. And last real quick question. So you went from 10 to 6, and then I heard you say, because I was looking at the fiscal note, that that's more in line with some other jurisdictions around you as opposed to 10. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's on.
St. Mary's County has a 6-year contract with automatic six-year renewal. Based on if you have favorable performance, it's automatically renewed for another 6 years. Calvert County is a 12-year contract. And currently, we had a 1-year contract up until last year, and now we have a 3-year contract in Charles County.
Thank you. Very informative. I really appreciate you bringing the bill.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you both. Thank you, Delegate Patterson. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1359. Delegate Metzger, House Bill 1395.
Good afternoon, Ways and Means. It's always a treat to come back home. Just want to get my stuff signed up. I had several people that were trying to sign up, but because of the 48-hour, they weren't able to. So I'm going to do the best I can with what I've got to work with. But it's a good, I come to Ways and Means, and best part is no physical note on this whatsoever. But my name is Delegate Rick Metzger for House Bill 1395, Volunteer Aids School Chaplains. Madam Chair, Vice Chair, distinguished members of the House and Ways and Means, for the record again, Rick Metzger, Legislative District 6. I am the proud sponsor of House Bill 1395 as school chaplains. In the past few years, there's been a rise in school violence. And recently, I've attended 2 different conferences, one in Washington, D.C., and one in Scottsdale, Arizona. And one of the things that I've learned that school chaplains have a tremendous influence over young people. The development mentors includes of all faith, of all mentors. They are non-denominational who do not promote or advocate of any kind of religion. Chaplains serve in our hospitals. They serve in our United States military. They serve over in Washington, D.C. in the House and in the Senate. And one of the things that I love, the school chaplains for students discuss the things that they do not feel comfortable with or talking to other school officials about. But chaplains are volunteers and undergo background checks as many things. But just for an example, what chaplains really do is their crisis intervention support. They help with community poverty essential needs. They help with teacher and staff appreciation. They help with student support and mentorship. They do community school events, resource funding, school spirit. One of the things that I must say, the chaplains are certified, chaplains are professional, chaplains are trained, chaplains are qualified, they're vetted. They're cyber secured, they're facilitators, they're educated, they're care provider, they're trustworthy, they're confident, they safety support, they're parent allies and teacher's friend, a confident motivator, a peacemaker, a community builder, a humble servant, an advocate. I know everybody's not like me, a team member, but a skilled responser. But I will say that every public servant, including legislators and first responders, fire departments, police departments, airports, have hospital chaplains or chaplains in the facilities. And we have denied or discriminated against the teachers for far too long. This is a tool for the teachers to have in their toolbox. Many times in my community, I've arranged and I've helped school teachers become a wedding officiant for them. School chaplains are, you go to a cafeteria, you sit around and you look at somebody that's kind of despondent or depressed or discouraged. I'd rather put my arms around that young person right then, ladies and gentlemen, and share with them and motivate them and become a mentor and an inspiration to them, rather than after they commit a crime of violence and then do the wraparound services. 31 states, as we speak today, 31 states are implementing this. 16 states already have it. So I feel like Maryland, of all states, could be a shining star for our community when it doesn't cost a dime to just put an extra tool in the toolbox. God bless you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1395. Thank you, Delegate Metzger.
It's always a treat.
All righty. All right, House Bill 1469, Delegate Shetty. And we have with us, this is a jointly assigned bill with the Economic Matters Committee. So if we could please welcome Delegates Ernst, Johnson, and Turner, who are with us. And if you have any questions for anyone, just pop up and hop on a mic, and we'll get that question answered. Delegate Shetty, it's my understanding you have Ricara Jones.
Yes.
Laura Hale.
Yes.
Marissa Waxman is with us virtually. Dr. Jim Krieger is with us virtually. And then Lorraine Ericat for your first panel.
Forgive all my props, you guys. It'll make sense in a moment. Thank you. We have a couple of, so I think Rikara also might be virtual now,
Okay, so is Ricard?
maybe? It's gonna be really fun, guys. Promise.
Delegate Shetty, just give us 1 minute to pull
Yes,
everybody
ma'am.
up.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We do mine. Let's get here. Okay. Eric.
And this is, he was supposed to be on panel 2. He's on panel 1. Okay. Our issue expert, she's him on virtual. Philadelphia. Oops. Sorry for the mess. Hi. Emily Shetty, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming out. All right. I gotta get a couple things here. So I'm ready.
Are you Dr. Krieger? Are you?
This is, what's your name? Eric Gosling. Is it okay if he's on this panel? He was on panel 2.
Whatever you would like to do.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, why don't you go ahead and get started?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, esteemed members of Ways and Means and Economic Matters. For the record, my name is Emily Shetty, and I'm here today to thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of HB 1469, the 4 Hour Kids Act. This bill is a public health bill. It will decrease consumption of sweetened beverages while investing in universal school meals for children, boosting our child care scholarship program, and making a sizable dent in our structural budget deficit. Contrary to what you all might think about me for having introduced this bill, I actually have a huge sweet tooth. In fact, there are few things that I love more than baking treats for my friends. So in preparation for today's discussion, I spent some time doing some baking yesterday, my market research for the hearing, we'll call it. And so I want to show you a couple of items. So this here is a Big Gulp from 7-Eleven. We were actually looking for a 32-ounce fountain beverage, so some of my math is just a little bit funky. This is a 30-ounce fountain beverage, the Big Gulp, extra large, 7-Eleven. This happens to be a Pepsi. It's not super filling, but it's really great if you like Pepsi and you want a treat. Nothing wrong with that, no judgment. So this 32-ounce, 30, but 30, if it were 32 ounces, it has 110 grams of sugar in it. It's not super filling, but again, no judgment. If you enjoy a treat, totally fine. Second, I brought you all, I'm gonna leave these treats for you in the back room, actually. Some of them have gluten and I have an allergy, but I baked them for you anyway. So I wanna show you, I'm a big Aldi fan. I do the shopping for my family. I like saving money. So I brought some chocolates for the committee as well from Aldi. So I brought it in part because I'm just a little bit obsessed with the store, but also because chocolate's tasty and we all have our vices. This is one of mine. So this one here, this milk chocolate with hazelnut is considered one serving, okay? It's got 220 calories, 18 grams of sugar. So the equivalent amount of sugar in the 110 gram sugar is these 2 giant chocolate bars and this one that's one serving. That is 110 grams of sugar. That's the equivalent in the amount of sugar here. Again, no judgment, love a good treat. Probably not something that most of us would sit down and have multiple of all of this in a day for several days in a row, right? And maybe we wouldn't give this quantity to our kids. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, no judgment. Very tasty. We all have our vices, right? Especially during session when it's so crazy. Third, and I'm gonna put some hand sanitizer on so that I can touch these here before I leave them for you. These are some sugar cookies I baked for you. So these sugar cookies, also from Aldi. Big fan, big fan. So one of these is one serving, okay? So what's the equivalent number of sugar cookies, sugar content-wise, to this giant thing of soda, right? 110 grams of sugar. How many servings of cookies? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 sugar cookies. The same quantity of sugar as a 110-gram sugar content Pepsi from 7-Eleven. So again, no judgment. You want to sit down and eat a whole plate of these delicious cookies? Awesome. I'm leaving them for you to enjoy. I hope you enjoy them. They are delicious, I heard from a friend whose kitchen I borrowed last night. And this is, again, same quantity of sugar. So when we think about this beverage as a treat, and we think about the equivalent amount of treats that we would have to consume to have the same amount of sugar, this is what we're talking about. And last, I made you guys a double layer Devil's Food chocolate cake. All right, look at that. I even put some hearts on it. I thought too late about, actually, I should have put the bill number on here. But I put some hearts just to give you guys something cute to look at. So I'm just gonna cut a bit, right? Just a little bit. So this, let's see, we're gonna cut about this amount here. All right, can you take this plate for me, Laura? Thank you. All right, so 110 grams of sugar. What amount of cake would that equal? Ooh, this is not coming out. All right, it's gonna be a little messy, but, oh, here we go. Is it this? No, it is this entire cake quantity. Again, I love Aldi. I've actually bought this cake mix for my son's birthday party the last 5 years because he loves this cake, and it makes me a very popular mom to make some cupcakes with it. So no judgment. You want to have a treat for your birthday or your kid's birthday, totally cool. I might judge you if you ate this whole cake every day though, right? And that's what we're talking about when we're thinking about the equivalent amount of sugar in this amount of soda, okay? So again, no judgment, maybe a little bit on the cake, but no judgment overall. All right, so very, very tasty, very delicious. Again, we're putting this in context, right? These are treats. They don't need to be everyday indulgences. Certainly not 94% of a double layer Devil's Food chocolate cake. However, as much as I love a sweet treat, all of the evidence against excessive consumption of sweetened beverages is really overwhelming. So remember, these beverages actually offer no health benefit. They are not particularly filling, right? So it's really easy to consume this quantity of sugar without actually feeling satiated. Unlike a cake, which might make you feel a bit full, right? If you ate 94% of a double layer chocolate cake. So just remember that these are all treats, so we need to be thinking about treating them as such. So excessive consumption of sweetened beverages, this is a really significant public health concern. So obesity, diabetes, heart disease, even strokes, they're all linked to sweetened beverage consumption. Artificial sweeteners, often looked at as a healthier alternative, they're used in diet beverages, right? But they're also heavily problematic. Research has shown that they can disrupt gut health, erode your tooth enamel, they cause headaches, and they still lead to significant weight gain despite having lower calories. So for me, artificial sweeteners, because of the autoimmune condition I have, when I have them, it actually triggers like a massive autoimmune inflammatory response, and I can't even move like my joints. Like that's how triggering some of these sweeteners can be. They're not healthy. And yet, oftentimes we think, okay, I'm gonna just sub this out for a diet Pepsi instead of the full Pepsi or whatever beverage you choose. Some people are big Coke fans, right? And I grew up in the South, so of course, that's my beverage of choice when I have it. So these are, again, not necessarily healthier despite having a lower calorie count. So that's why it was really essential that we included artificial sweeteners in the language of this bill as well. So here are just a last prop for today. This is a binder full of research, peer-reviewed public research on artificial sweeteners and how harmful they are to your health. I can leave this for you guys if you want. And this one is on sweetened beverages and what the harms are. So again, full binder. We actually ran out of space, and we used almost a full ream of paper. So sorry, environment, for that. But this is why this bill is such an important public health measure. So want to just kind of share. So Philadelphia recently implemented a similar tax in 2017. It provides a really relevant case study. And so we have a sponsor panelist who I think is virtual who can speak to some of the details of that. That city's sweetened beverage tax actually led to a significant drop in the volume of taxed beverages sold, and it generated substantial revenue. So nearly 40% of the funds were used to support the city's free preschool program, which opened thousands of seats for preschool students and supported preschool operations. Furthermore, 2 independent studies have found that the tax had no net effect on overall employment in the city. This demonstrates the positive impact that such a tax can have on both public health and our communities. So as introduced, the revenue generated from this bill is going to be used to enhance the Healthy School Meals for All Fund by an estimated $189 million. The Child Care Scholarship Program by roughly $50 million, and then the rest will go towards our general fund. What is our general fund? It helps to support aid to our local police departments. It helps to fund Medicaid. It helps to fund our developmentally disabled community, right? A lot of you, Republicans and Democrats on this committee, have come and asked me specifically, how are you, Emily, going to restore these cuts that were made in the governor's budget on DDA? This is one of the potential solutions I offer for consideration. This revenue allocation, it was really aimed at targeting the funds in areas that have been disproportionately harmed by these beverages. Communities with higher rates of sweetened beverage consumption often face greater health disparities, so directing funds to programs like the Healthy School Meals for All and Child Care Scholarship Fund ensures that we're addressing these inequities and supporting the well-being of our most vulnerable populations. So additionally, just for your consideration, committee, we've also submitted an amendment that was requested by the Maryland Health for All Coalition, and that would provide $15 million of the $500 million estimated generated by this bill to the Health Equity Resource Community Fund. So council should have that in record. So I just want to address, before I turn to my sponsor panel, just a couple of quick things that you're going to hear from some opponents to the bill. And I see lots of friends with their mics lit up, so I'm sure I'm going to get questions on this as well. So some people might argue with this tax is regressive, right? Yeah, groceries are a larger share of a family's budget for low-income families. That's a fact. But what is also a fact is if you don't purchase these products, you won't pay this tax. Consumers will make healthier choices when treats cost more than their budget allows. That is what makes this a public health approach. The second argument you might hear is that this is a tax on groceries when food prices are already really high. Well, in response, I did a little bit more market research than just visiting Aldi. I went to our local Safeway in Kensington, and yeah, I agree, food prices are high. I'm the primary grocery shopper in my family. It's why we shop at lots of different stores, and the food prices, they've not come down yet, but I just want to note that sugary beverages are not necessarily a needed item in any family's diet or budget. And they don't need to be, right? These are treats. You wouldn't necessarily say, well, this double layer chocolate cake costs more money this week, and so I might not be able to afford it, and that's bad. You would say, okay, when I want a treat, I will pay for this treat. I want to also note that when I went to the Safeway, I noted that every single item in the soda aisle actually had stickers on there that enabled consumers to save more money if they bought more product. So because of the structure of this bill, it's an excise tax on the distributor. And they don't necessarily have to pass the full 2 cents per ounce on to the consumer. That is optional, and I don't think that they'll necessarily do that. In fact, when I went to the store, I often saw that the heavily discounted sticker price was up to 5 cents per ounce discounted right off the top for consumers who bought two or more cases of soda. So this is something that the retailers could choose to and distributors could choose to pass on or not. It's up to them. But if they do pass it on, it will give that opportunity for that point of reflection in the consumer aisle, or by the consumer rather, that will say, is this a treat or is this something I need for daily consumption? And again, that is what makes this a public health approach. The last thing I want to note is that opposition will share that this will have a negative effect on small and large businesses in Maryland. I have a really strong belief in the nimble nature of entrepreneurs and our private sector, that they can adjust to the market changes. They're routinely evaluating what is selling well, and they're adapting and they're innovating as needed. And so I have very little reason to believe that this won't occur the same way. Additionally, I've already referenced this in my earlier testimony, and we'll defer to some of our expert panelists who can speak more to what happened in Philadelphia, where the same arguments were made. So in conclusion, HB 1469, it presents a vital opportunity to address our public health concerns related to consumption of sweetened beverages, help drive down costs in our healthcare system. And by imposing a tax on distributors, we can reduce the intake of these harmful drinks, we can promote healthier choices, and we can generate revenue to support essential programs that benefit all Maryland residents, especially those in underserved communities. Positive outcomes that we saw in Philadelphia really validate the effectiveness of such a tax. Philly is not the only jurisdiction that's passed it. 7 other municipalities have as well. If Maryland chooses to pass it, we would be the first state to do so. Thank you so much for your consideration. I respectfully request a favorable report, and I would love to have an opportunity for the sponsor panel to say a few words or take questions whatever you choose. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. So who's here can go next, and then we'll go virtual and then take some questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and honorable members of the Ways and Means and Economic Matters Committees. My name is Laura Hale. I'm the Director of Government Relations with the American Heart Association, and we stand in strong support of this legislation. To put it simply, this bill is a win for kids, a win for families, and a win for Maryland. The Heart Association has stood for 100 years, looking to make this country and for Maryland to be a place where people live longer and healthier lives. This legislation will do just that. As we continue to look at a tough budget year, we know that Medicaid costs will continue to rise due to diseases directly caused by the consumption of sugary drinks, both with real sugar and artificial sugar. We can't cut our way out of cost concerns with Medicaid, but we can hope to prevent it, and this legislation will aid us in doing this. As was noted, the research is strong and has continued to be seen that in Philadelphia there were not jobs lost, there were only jobs gained as the city invested in child care. And actually in that comparison, they compared to what were the job markets for the beverage community during they compared with Baltimore, what were job losses and gains during that time, and saw that there were no differences between the two jurisdictions as well. Another important thing to note is the funding for Healthy School Meals for All in this legislation, is that Healthy School Meals for All is a protective factor Johns Hopkins found for our families in making sure that they do not drop further into poverty, or for our middle class families to stay middle class, especially in times of crisis such as the pandemic. And so in conclusion, Maryland is facing an important choice. We can choose to cut programs and turn away from what we have stood for as a state during this time, or we can make a choice for our kids and invest in Maryland. And we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and honorable members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I'm Dr. Yvonne Commodore Mensah. I'm a board member for the American Heart Association, cardiovascular nurse epidemiologist, and my most cherished title is mom. I offer my strong support of HB 1469 because I see the harmful effects of sugar on heart health every day at work. And then I come home to protect my 11-year-old from the same dangers. When I attend his friends' parties with endless soda or sports events promoting sugary sports drinks. I often find myself educating other parents and family members about what the research clearly shows. Sugar-sweetened beverages contribute directly to childhood obesity, which is a major risk factor for heart disease. Now, I know it can be challenging to go against the norm, but packing water bottles and choosing healthier options has become our routine. While added sugar comes from many sources, as we see here, we know that the biggest culprit is sweetened beverages, which account for about a quarter of our daily intake. This legislation will not only help to encourage healthier choices in Maryland, it will also address the needed investments in programs such as school meals and the child care scholarship program you heard about. We all know it's the right choice for Maryland, is the right choice for a healthier future, and the right choice for Maryland families. I urge a favorable report on House Bill 1469 for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and the esteemed committee of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Eric Gosley, and I'm the Food Service Director for Wicomico County Public Schools and the President of the Maryland School Nutrition Association. And I'm going to speak briefly about the benefits of this bill to our school food service operations, mainly on the benefits that Wicomico County has been a part of since we've been participating in the community eligibility provision that allows for us to serve all of our students at no charge. Upon returning from the pandemic, USDA allowed waivers to continue serving students breakfast and lunch at no charge. When those waivers sunset, Wicomico County Schools leadership implemented the CEP program. And the benefit that this CEP program has given to our parents and families, those families that were just above the income level to qualify for free and reduced price meals, the program relieved them from the stress of having to give their students lunch money or put gas in their car to go back and forth to work. It also removed the process of parents having to fill out applications for free and reduced meals. And some were reluctant to fill out applications and therefore made their students have to pay full price. It also reduced or eliminated some of the things that our school system faces on a daily basis is meal debt, where when students can't pay for the meal, they charge the meal, and then that increases debt for the student's family, as well as missed revenue for the food service operation. The benefit to the school districts, again, the application process. When families have to submit applications, those applications have to be processed. Therefore, it creates a burden on the school operators to get applications when students bring them to school. And we ask you to support this House bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will go virtually to Ricara Jones, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ricara Jones. I have the pleasure of serving as the Political Action Chair for the Maryland State Conference of the NAACP. This is an issue that we have advocated on behalf of for years at the local level. I'm really glad to see that the Maryland General Assembly has taken this up. For too long, sugary drink companies have targeted Black and brown communities with ads and promotions for soda, fruit drinks, and sweet tea, products that have proven to lead to serious health problems. These are health problems that unfortunately many of my members are suffering from. We all know and have seen that overconsumption of these drinks have been tied to heart disease, diabetes, chronic tooth decay, as you've already heard. And they're preventable, but yet they're prevalent in my family, in my community, and other communities of color across this state. I believe that this is intentional. There is a deliberate lack of healthy options in our corner stores and our grocery stores. Our kids and our families deserve to walk in a store just like any other family in this state and be able to choose water and other healthy drinks. Some of the same companies that make these sugary beverages, they also make healthier options, but they are not available in our neighborhoods. So outside of the positive impact that this would have on communities of color, it comes at a time when the state really needs the funding to cover programs that support working families, like early childhood education, like childcare, and healthy school meals. So will there be a higher cost for sugary beverages? Yes. But will there be a lower cost for our communities, a lower cost for healthcare infrastructure, and a lower cost for our kids? Thank you so much. We urge a favorable report.
Okay, Marissa Waxman, please, for 2 minutes.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today as you consider a soda tax for Maryland. My name is Marissa Waxman, and I served as the City of Philadelphia's first Deputy Revenue Commissioner during the implementation of the Philadelphia beverage tax, which launched in January 2017. And I was Philadelphia's budget director from 2019 to 2023. And presently, I'm the executive director of the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, which is an independent state authority charged with fiscal oversight of the City of Philadelphia. I'm here to share Philadelphia's experience with implementing a local beverage tax, commonly referred to as soda tax, and address any concerns about its fiscal and economic impact. Philadelphia enacted its beverage tax as a 1.5 cent per ounce levy on sugar sweetened and artificially sweetened beverages, with revenues dedicated to pre-K, community schools, improvements to parks, recreation centers, and libraries. And from the outset, there were concerns that the tax would be difficult to implement, that it would lead to significant job losses, or that it would fail to generate adequate revenue. I want to be clear, those concerns did not materialize. From a fiscal standpoint, all taxes have some impact on underlying activity, and new taxes can be difficult to predict. Even with these challenges, the Philadelphia beverage tax has been a reliable source of revenue. In its first full year, it generated $78 million. Since then, collections have remained relatively stable, even as consumption patterns adjusted. With ongoing education and enforcement, the tax continues to generate around $70 million a year, and is one of Philadelphia's most accurately predicted revenue streams. Importantly, the revenue stream allowed the city to make critical investments in early childhood education and community facilities. Economically, while opponents predicted major declines in retail sales and beverage industry losses, we didn't see evidence of widespread harm. Overall retail employment remained steady. Studies have shown that while consumers adjusted their habits, these shifts were not enough to disrupt the local economy. Businesses and households adapted. And then the public benefits have been significant, thousands of children getting access to pre-K and other improved outcomes. And so I just want you to know that as Maryland considers a similar path, I can say that Philadelphia's well-structured beverage tax is a viable revenue source that supports critical public investments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As you can see, we have quite a few questions here.
I think, Madam Chair, there might be one final
Dr.
virtual.
Krieger, go
Thank you,
ahead,
if you don't
please,
mind.
for 2
Yes.
minutes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
And then everybody stick around for the questions.
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity to speak in strong support of HB 1469. I'm Dr. Jim Krieger, a physician and professor emeritus at University of Washington, and I led efforts to adopt and implement Seattle's sweetened beverage tax and advised over 20 jurisdictions on similar taxes. Seattle's experience shows sweetened beverage taxes work. Sales of sugary drinks are down 22%. We generate $22 million annually. And these funds provide hundreds of low-income families with vouchers for fruits and vegetables, turning soda sales into healthier food purchases, benefiting local businesses. The tax also supports early learning initiatives. The beverage tax is a progressive policy. My research in Seattle shows that $6.4 million a year is transferred from high-income to low-income households. Higher-income individuals pay more of the tax collected, while lower-income residents benefit from the funded programs. In addition, lower-income Seattle residents reduce sugary drink consumption more than twice as much as high-income residents. And despite industry claims taxes do not reduce business sales or revenues, our study in Seattle found no negative impacts on revenue or business closures in small independent stores. I recommend applying the tax to beverages sweetened with either sugar or non-sugar sweeteners. This stabilizes and broadens the tax base as industry shifts to beverages with non-sugar sweeteners, which now comprise 30% of the market and is increasing. Including the beverages with non-sugar sweeteners is more equitable because higher income and white people purchase more diet beverages. For example, 37% of people with higher incomes consume diet beverages compared to only 21% of people with lower incomes. And beverages with non-sugar sweeteners are unhealthy. They increase the risk of type 2 diabetes by 23% and cardiovascular mortality by 19%. It also prevents a shift in sales and consumption from sugary drinks to beverages sweetened with non-sugar sweeteners. So in conclusion, a sweetened beverage tax that includes beverages with non-sugar sweeteners is a progressive, evidence-based policy benefiting public health and maximizing revenue. I urge a favorable report on HB 1469. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have quite a few questions. So committee, I will ask you, if you have a question, please direct it to someone. Particularly, it's hard for folks online to follow what's happening. So if you have a question, please direct it to one individual. Thank you, and I will start with the vice chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. I really appreciated your presentation and the sweet treats for later, so thank you. I wanted to, first of all, say that I am excited about the piece of this bill that creates revenue around healthy meals. We know in this committee we've been trying to expand our healthy meals in schools for a very long time, so seeing a dedicated revenue source is definitely exciting. But I do have some concerns around community cost when it comes to this tax driving up costs for residents at a time when inflation is high. And in particular, I read that it takes an increase of 10 to 20% cost for there to be a change in behavior. And 10 to 20% is pretty significant for a family. And what I wanted to ask one person to comment on is that we see a lot of taxes here in the Ways and Means Committee. I think what is interesting and maybe unusual about this one is that the very same community that we are working to help via the school lunches is also the same community that would probably bear the brunt of the cost and the tax. And usually with our taxes, there's a different format when it comes to taxing the community that you're also trying to benefit. And we understand this could be a pass-through since it's a tax on the distributor. So I wanted to ask for comment on that, the rising costs, and the fact that in a way, through the pass-through and knowing who tends to consume these types of drinks, that we are potentially taxing the very people and increasing their costs that we want to help with this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, for your excellent question. I really, really appreciate where you're coming from on this very much, and it was something that we've thought a lot about in structuring this bill the way that we did. Unlike many of the taxes that you hear in this committee, this is not a tax that is broadly applicable to everybody under a certain income or over a certain income or anything. It requires a choice by the consumer to choose to purchase this beverage or not. And those that have tighter budgets will choose potentially otherwise. They might not make a decision to buy soda as an everyday item, but instead curb consumption, which is sort of the public health approach to it, right? That once we see reduction in consumption rates, then you see better health outcomes for these communities that have previously potentially been relying on a lot of these sugary beverages for increased caloric consumption or because they just happen to be more accessible and available, as Ms. Jones had noted. I know Dr. Krieger in his testimony referenced several studies that have been shown to show that this is not a regressive tax, but instead a progressive tax. And so if it's okay, may I have him just restate just specifically to answer that one specific point, please?
Yeah, Dr. Krieger, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a very important question. And as I said, I think looking at both Philadelphia, Seattle, and San Francisco, we found the same pattern, that the vast majority of the tax revenue is collected from people with higher incomes, and the revenues are invested in programs that specifically benefit lower income communities. That means there's a net transfer actually of dollars from higher income residents to lower income residents. The other important fact is that the actual burden on a household is pretty small per year. For example, in Seattle, a lower income household would pay only $19 more in taxes because they're specifically only on a tax product, sweetened beverages, not on all groceries, not on all food prices. And people choose to consume less when the tax is there, so they pay less tax. So overall, it results in revenues that are generated that are benefiting low-income communities and communities of color. And those communities benefit hugely from lower consumption and better health.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Shetty. I just had a couple questions to try to clarify sort of what the bill does. We talked a lot. You had me, I started getting discombobulated when you brought out the chocolate cake and all the stuff. I was like, what does this bill do again? Chocolate cake bill, I like it. But The bill, like, I have a Sprite. I don't really like Sprite that much. I'm more of a Mountain Dew man,
your
but that's
prop
what they
for the
choose. That's what they choose to
Okay.
get in the back. I try very hard to try to limit myself 1, maximum 2 sodas a day, sometimes no soda a day. I know it's not great to like drink a 2-liter gallon of soda by yourself, whatever it is. But the bill, it's not just for soda or full sugar drinks, right? So it includes a wide variety of drink substances that don't have sugar, that have reduced sugar, or that manufacturers and retailers are trying to offer healthier alternatives as opposed to a traditional gallon of Jolt Cola that's basically just, sugar with a little bit of water thrown in there, I think. But your bill applies equally to any type of this substance. Like, I even saw some people think like protein drinks and powders because they have some sugar content to it. If you used a protein drink because you're working out, you're trying to be healthy, those would have a higher cost. Is that your understanding of how it would work?
So first I want to go back to this argument I made earlier about how artificial sweeteners are not actually healthier, right? And so that was a big reason for why we included them as part of this bill. We wanted to make sure that this really is a public health approach to addressing some of the big healthcare challenges that we're seeing across our healthcare system. And I'll tell you, as the Health and Social Services Subcommittee Chair on Appropriation, I mean, I don't have to tell folks around this room how expensive our healthcare system is in this state. Even with all of the incredible work that we're doing in Maryland to help drive down costs, as long as chronic diseases continue to skyrocket, chronic diseases that are often fueled by and made worse by these products, then we're going to continue to see increased costs. So just want to point out that first, just as a reference. We did include language in the bill to actually explicitly exclude products that have some nutritional value or benefit. So for example, there is, I believe, give me 1 second, please, sir.
I saw it, if it helps you. It says natural fruit juice,
Yeah.
natural vegetable juice, milk, infant formula, beverage for medical use, or water that is not flavored using sugar or non-nutrient.
That's right. And yes, you are correct that this bill would apply to liquid form beverages like this, powder form and syrup. And so actually
Right.
this is created using a syrup in a fountain drink, right?
Sure,
So
when you
it would
mix it.
apply to that as well.
So that's my problem. So I'm not an expert in any of this, but you talk to people in the grocery industry and they'll suggest that a huge number of the actual beverages that they have for sale, 70, 80, 90%, are going to qualify for this. It's not just soda. They talk about a lot of juices, orange juice, apple juice, technically have some degree of sugars in them. There are some that are just pure juice. I think the human body likes the taste a little bit more if you put a little bit of sugar, a little bit of something in there for many people. And so they're basically saying, other than just water and milk, plain milk, plain water, almost everything they have on their shelves is going to get the
I would
tax.
dispute that by noting that on page 7 of the bill, lines 10 through 12 explicitly excludes or defines natural fruit juice, which includes liquid resulting from the pressing of fruits or from the dilution with water of dehydrated fruit juice. So that would exclude fruit juases.
What if they add
Then,
sugar to the fruit juice, though?
I would also note that natural vegetable juices are excluded, milk is excluded. All products that have some nutritional value or medical use are excluded from this bill. So it's not just water that would be excluded.
But if you have an orange juice or an apple juice that there's a gram of sugar or a non-nutritive, I think that's the right word to use it,
Yeah.
non-nutritive substance for a sweetener added, then all of a sudden, so it's,
Right.
that's
So,
it's
but most-
99% healthy, but it's going to get the same tax as my 38 grams of sugar that I'm unfortunately imbibing here through my
Right.
Sprite. They're going to get taxed the same.
So most juices, like orange juice, have natural sugar, and that would not count under this bill. That
only
would be
additive.
excluded. Added sugars, when you add them, or sweeteners, would be counted in this bill.
And then the only other question I have, just in, with the effects of it, just so that we can actually illustrate what it would be. You probably went to law school for very good reasons. I think I went there to avoid doing math, so sometimes I'm not as sharp with the math. I'm relying on some data. But there's a lot of data that suggests that, so an 8-pack of a 20-ounce sport drink, you know, a Gatorade sport drink that's got some additive to it that people use because they think it helps them in their recovery from sporting activities, athletics, whatever it is. A lot of indication that currently costs about $9.79. It would have $3.20 tax added to the price. That's a 33% gain. Or if you got a 2-liter bottle of soda, soda's probably the worst from the health perspective of all these products. You got a 2-liter bottle of soda, $3.49 in your grocery store. You add a $1.36 tax, so it's driving the cost up by almost 40%.
Sure.
Does that sound pretty consistent with what you understand the bill would do, how it would just have this really significant multiplier to the costs of these items?
So I don't have a calculator in front of me. I did major in math and then go to law school.
That's why I figured, I knew, I could tell.
But I don't have the calculator in front of me to verify the numbers. What I will say is that because of this being structured as an excise tax versus a sales tax at the point of sale, the excise tax would give an option to the retailers and the distributors on how much, if any, to pass along to the consumers.
But nobody's going to do that. If you, the example I gave you, if you added $1.36 to a product you sell for $3.49, I guarantee you your profit margin on the $3.49 bottle of soda is probably, it's in the maybe the dimes. So if you ate the $1.36 tax on it, you're losing money by selling the soda. And that's just economics. They're going to have to pass the costs along in order to stay in business with those products.
So what I'll say, and then I'm going to defer to Ms. Hill here because she has some information about Philadelphia and how that worked, and or the Philadelphia expert on how it worked there. But what I'll say is that, again, doing my little market research in Kensington Safeway, the retailers are already choosing to lower the cost when it benefits them, when they want to drive increased consumption. And say, if you buy 2 or 3 cases of soda, you get 5 cents off per ounce. These are choices that are being made to drive that same economic choice that you're arguing would happen in reverse. So I want to defer to Ms. Hale because she had something she'd like to share on this point, please.
So specifically on the question of how much is passed through, what we saw in Philadelphia is that the industry chose to pass on about 68% of the cost. So you wouldn't see the full 2 cents per ounce at the end of the market. And sorry, I did not major in math, so I'm not going to do those numbers off the back of my head. We did see that convenience stores did push through more and chose to actually go above, but that was a choice that they made, as opposed to our grocery and other spaces at about 68%.
So actually you're saying convenience stores actually went above 100%. If the added tax was $1, just for mathies, they would have said, hey, it now costs $1.05 more to buy this. Some of that, I don't want to get into debate with you, I know a lot of people have questions. Some of that may have to do with the effects of volume purchasing. So you can get things cheaper if you buy 1 million units than if you buy 1,000 units typically from the wholesaler or the manufacturer. So that's how you can price your points in that kind of a system. But thank you for your answers, and I appreciate Delegate Shetty the information. And also the chocolate cake, as long as I get a piece of it.
It will be left for your enjoyment. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Wells.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the bill sponsor and the panel. So I represent the 40th District, which is Baltimore City, and in my district, and also in other parts of the city, I could probably count, we have maybe 3 grocery stores that are spread pretty sparsely throughout the district. And for myself, I typically have to travel outside of my district in order to get groceries. So you mentioned a lot about option, right? And I think about when I would if I walk into a 7-Eleven or a convenience store versus when I walk into a grocery store, my options are very, very different, right? So we know that there's inequitable food access. And so I'm curious, you know, and I want to also just acknowledge, I do understand that the funding that you are seeking to dedicate for really important food access, I agree with is really important, but I do have some thoughts about how it would impact the day-to-day for my constituents and to what extent we're kind of heavy-handedly possibly forcing them to make some changes. And I do understand all the health implications. I don't want to, but I think it's important to factor in some of the optics as well.
Of course.
But I'm curious to hear a little bit more. I think Ms. Jones perhaps alluded to this. I'm wondering if you could share more about what options do the manufacturers have to provide lower sugar products on on the shelves currently speaking. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah. Many manufacturers, as Ms. Jones very helpfully pointed out, produce a variety of different product, right? And this is sort of the beauty of the private sector. They're able to constantly innovate, monitor sales trends, decide what is actually something that will sell in a specific market, and then direct those products to be responsive to the consumer's demand and needs. And so, as Ms. Jones had noted, in many of these stores, it's based on, current modeling of what is selling. Now, if you have higher price points offered on some of these options, then consumers will want to make other choices that are healthier to them. So instead of buying, a six-pack of soda, they might buy some orange juice if they want a treat, or juice instead, a beverage that's not water. And many of these companies produce fruit and vegetable juices that would be wholly exempt from this tax structure, and those prices would not increase directly as a result of this.
So are you interested in the behavioral change of the producers in the sense of providing drinks that have lower sugar content?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, that's a big part of the point of the bill, is to drive public health outcomes. And the best way to do that is by giving consumers choices that are healthier for them. And so there are multiple ways to do it. One of it is costs, and one of it is how the retailers are choosing to allocate these products. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and then I think the last one, I'm trying to make this a question, but I do think that the merits of the bill, I do wonder how far they go in parts of a vast majority of my community that we cannot bring in big box stores. And so I would love to think about what are ways that we can try to address the broader ecosystem aspect. And I know that's a tall order, but I do think that, albeit this, I think, very well intentioned, I do think that we will still run into challenges in terms of the cost in parts of
and
communities
access
across the state that don't have access to equitable food options. Because you mentioned options a lot, and it seemed like I thought, well, there's a lack of options in a lot of communities. So I thank you for the bill and looking forward to more discussion.
Yes, I'd love to continue this conversation offline. Thank you.
Pardon me, if we could all welcome our state treasurer.
Hello.
Former member of this body, and I would like to welcome all the gentlemen from Omega Psi Phi fraternity who are here in Annapolis today. In particular, very dear friend and former Delegate Frank Turner's son, Frank Turner Jr., is here.
Thank you.
So as you can see, we have a very interesting bill up. And our next question, Delegate Hornberger.
Madam Chair, I just have some questions about applicability. So under this bill as written, would this apply to alcoholic beverages such as liquor or pre-made cocktails?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No.
And then the next question I have, and this builds on what my colleague was saying, so the industry has responded, they have low sugar drinks. Those are still taxed at the same rate as the big gulp that you have there on the stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on the FDA website, and they set parameters for what is healthy consumption of sugars. It's not zero. It's around 50 grams per day based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So if I'm buying a diet soda that I'm having with my lunch once a day, I'm still within the healthy parameters as outlined by the FDA. I'm still paying the tax on that single beverage that I purchase, right? Just the same as if I'm drinking 6 of those big gulps a day. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. So again, want to point to this artificial sweetened beverage research binder that I'm happy to share with you, but this outlines a number of the really important
Even if it's
studies.
a low sugar drink. Let's say I'm drinking my,
but I will
half
also,
of my Mexican Coke. It's got real sugar in it.
Yes.
Still paying that tax.
It would still be taxed. But before I want to offer an opportunity for our panelist, who is quite a bit of an expert on these matters, to share some thoughts on why.
Okay, great.
So I was going to highlight that there are different sources of sugar the foods that we consume have sugar, but we're talking about added sugars.
Correct, yeah.
Right, so that limit that you refer to can come from healthier food options. So there is no healthy threshold for added sugars beyond the limit that you specified. In terms of how our body processes added sugars, right? So if you consume a food that has natural sugars, our body recognizes it differently from foods that have added sugars that are in the big gulp. They're not equivalent.
Right, but I'm talking up to the limit that's outlined by the FDA. If I'm consuming that via beverage or via a piece of cake, and I'm within those healthy parameters, and I'm a healthy adult, I'm still paying the same tax as the guy that's buying the 6 big gulps. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for bringing the bill. And mine's more of a technical question, and it's actually something about a running joke amongst our caucus members and my concern about the bill. So in Maryland, we have something very unique to us, snowball stands, right? It's kind of a Maryland thing to have snowball stands inside of the road, typically ran by kids or young adults. And I'm looking at page 7, line 27, talks about syrup mixed with ice. Well, a snowball is syrup mixed with ice. So would this apply to our kids' snowball stands?
So the distributor of the syrup would have the tax applied to them, and they can choose whether or not to pass that tax along to wherever the child is purchasing the syrup.
So it'd be passed along to the snowball stand, ultimately to, the consumers. Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had, first question I had about the big gulp. You said it was 30 ounces, am I correct?
Yeah, so we were trying to find a 32-ounce one because initially when we were doing our calculations, it was based on that. And then this was the closest fountain beverage we could locate. This one is 30 ounces, yes.
Okay, so that particular drink, you would say we would pay taxes on the 30 ounces?
Correct.
Okay, what about the ice that's inside of it? You can't fit 30 ounces in there. I'm bad when I get a big cup and fill it full of ice, but yet I'm gonna have to pay taxes on 30 ounces.
Right.
And I don't think that's fair.
Okay, well, we can always look at ways to provide some friendly amendments to this. You are on the committee, of course. But yes, the tax is computed on the volume that the cup could hold.
Right,
So
right.
if you choose as a consumer to add ice to it, then that would be part of your volume.
Okay, I was wondering how you would deal with that. The other question I have is for the panelists. Isn't carbohydrates more dangerous than sugar? A large quantity of carbohydrates, if we're talking about health benefits, I would like to know.
So our bodies convert the carbohydrates that we consume into sugars, right? But they're still not the same as added sugars that are highly processed.
So eating carbohydrates could possibly have the same effect as drinking a big gulp?
No, it's a totally different item. It's comparing two totally different things from a metabolic standpoint.
Carbohydrates turns into sugar, correct?
It's not the same kind of sugar. It's the way your body processes it.
I was just curious because I know for years they always said eat a lot of carbohydrates. Come find out it's been wrong.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Delegate Aaron's. Welcome to Ways and Means, my friend.
Hello.
Oh, I wasn't 100% ready. I'm going to go to the fiscal note real quick, if that's okay with you.
Yes, sir.
What it starts talking about, it says there's $500 million in revenue to
Yes.
general fund, $500 million revenue. 189 million of that goes to the Healthy School Program.
Yes.
And in that, where are we getting the money today for the Healthy School Program?
It's coming, go ahead, you can go.
So we have a variety of different sources that currently fund school meals. Some of that is federal money through two different programs, the free and reduced price lunch program, as well as through the community eligibility provision, or CEP. Those are two federal programs. Locally, through the state, we have the Maryland Meals for Achievement program that funds breakfast in some low-income schools. We have, as well well as some additional money that covers the reduced price lunch category. So now if you qualify for reduced price in the state of Maryland, it costs you $0 because the state picks up the additional fee. And additionally, right now, some of our local jurisdictions are choosing to take on some of the cost in order to participate in the CEP, or the Community Eligibility Provision program, such as Baltimore County, Montgomery County has it taken on for some, and a variety of others throughout the state.
Okay, will this 189 million be in addition to or
Yes.
instead of?
In addition.
Supplement.
So then we're paying that already. We have all these funds coming in now. That's satisfying the vast majority of what we use, is that right?
It is taking on some, but not all. Many places, we still have kids paying for lunch and breakfast in schools.
Well, are they kids that need, or are they kids they're paying for lunch?
I mean, so need is subjective, right? So there's a sliding scale for need. That's why some children are able to receive free lunches and some reduced price. But if you are slightly over that income eligibility threshold, you get no support. And so you're paying 100%. So there are and then there are also families who, for whatever reason, maybe they have barriers, or like language barriers, or believe that there's a stigma associated, or just don't have the time to complete the forms. They would qualify potentially, but they are paying full price anyway, as our school nutrition expert says.
Is that, then when we look at this 180 million, we're actually running at a $180 million deficit in that fund right now?
So we could actually fully fund universal school meals for all children if this bill were passed.
Okay, but is that the intent, to feed all children, no matter, regardless of where they stand on?
Yes.
Okay, the other is $50 million goes to Child Scholarship Fund. And then I guess based on 150, we still got $300 million going to go to the general fund, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, that's a tax increase on all of us, and that will go to that.
No, it's not a tax increase on everyone, sir. It is a tax increase on those who choose to buy the beverages.
Okay, thank you. On just another quick question about restaurants or whatever. They buy Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola in a syrup, if you will. And this will tax that too, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when you look at, I think they say 1 gallon of that that's 832 ounces would be doing Coke. That's what it would roughly out to. So the cost to a restaurant, and I know you all understand restaurants, a lot of that is waste. And when we have a syrup, a lot of that doesn't always go. You can't have an exact, but we're going to require them to pay that on each 128 ounce.
If the distributor chooses to pass along the full amount, then yes, they would pay that.
Okay. Last question, I'm sorry. I guess my other point is when the fiscal note was brought up, we talk about revenues, and that's all good and all that stuff, but it doesn't really address the loss of revenue, because I know people living close to the other states like Delaware, what have you, West Virginia, that's going to account for something. That's not included in this fiscal note, is it?
I don't believe it is. I don't think that that's able to be calculated by the fiscal note drafters, but I will say that what we've learned from studies from Pennsylvania and other municipal jurisdictions, right, that have passed this, is that there has not been significant loss of revenue to the municipalities that have passed it to outside jurisdictions. People aren't necessarily going into the suburbs or choosing to go to a restaurant in the suburbs of Philly to avoid paying this tax. That's not what the studies have shown.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Delegate. Thank you.
Delegate Miracle North.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill. This definitely hits home, as I have a history of diabetes in my family. My grandmother, my dad, husband, so this tax is very poignant for me. I do have questions on the definitions that are in the bill. Were they based upon how the industry defines some of these drinks? Because my concern is, what if we say exemptions are natural sugar, natural juices and whatnot? And I don't want that to be, if it were to pass, to be a loophole for certain industries to avoid the tax. So where do the definitions come from, including the beverage of medical use?
Sure, I'll defer to Ms. Hill.
Sure. So thank you. So thank you for the question. We modeled this off of the bill that was passed in Philadelphia, as well as looking at other legislation across the country, and in consultation with Dr. Jim Krieger as well, who is the expert on this type of language. And so specifically within the bill, we've defined natural juice as 100% fruit juice or vegetable juice or with added water. Which should very much contemplate not added sugars within that. Within medical beverages, I believe that the state has a definition. If they do not, I think that would be a wonderful catch to continue to define.
Yes, the beverage for medical use is cross-defined with actually a U.S. statute. Yeah.
I'm
federal
sorry,
statute.
Delegate, I didn't catch the answer.
My apologies. My apologies. So the beverage for medical use is a cross-reference to existing federal law.
Federal law, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my fellow math major lawyer as well for bringing the bill. We are a rare breed. So to the sponsor, a few quick questions to start. You serve on appropriations, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You are the chair of Health and Social Services Subcommittee, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So is it fair to say that you have a good grasp in those roles of the budget and the challenges that we face therein?
I should hope so, yes.
We all do. So, and with your math degree, I imagine you should be fine. So can you talk to us about Medicaid and how much that's driving some of the challenges that we're facing today?
Yeah, so Medicaid, the state portion of Medicaid is about $9 billion. And we receive significant federal funding to support our Medicaid population, which is good. The federal match varies from 50 to 90%, depending on the population and program that's being served. But ultimately, we are operating a number of waivers that have been granted by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services to try and help drive down costs in our system. Some of it is targeted on hospital spending. Some of it is targeted on good policies, like trying to ensure that individuals who have significant developmental disabilities who don't want to or need to be institutionalized can be cared for in home settings at lower costs, ideally. However, you all might recall that the Board of Public Works, on which our great treasurer sits with our comptroller and governor, met just a few months ago while we were in interim in the summer to address significant, burgeoning, blowing up costs in our Medicaid program, some of which was predictable and most of it wasn't. And so we are seeing hundreds of millions of dollars of increase added cost to our Medicaid program, despite all of the incredible policy work that we're doing to try and bring costs down. One of the things that we've not been thinking about doing is how do we address chronic disease costs and what burden that places on our healthcare system, not just from our Medicaid population, right? Like chronic diseases affect all of us. I have a chronic autoimmune condition myself. I am privately insured. But the cost to me and the cost to the choices that I make, cost of the choices that I make to our healthcare system, to myself as well, right? In terms of added additional medical costs that I don't need to bear if I make different choices, those are real. And when you aggregate them, you see significant added burdens to our state budget and to all of us as taxpayers as well.
Thank you so much. And to Ms. Hale, can you talk to us about the rate of diabetes and prediabetes in Maryland?
Sure, happy to. Thank you for the question, Delegate Young. We really have seen this continue to skyrocket. It's estimated that at least 10% of the population in Maryland has type 2 diabetes, which is typically triggered by lifestyle choices like the consumption of sugary drinks as opposed to type 1. And so in addition to that, we see huge levels of heart disease and rates of obesity. And what we've seen from this type of legislation in other jurisdictions, the data has continued to prove out that we've seen decreases in obesity rate, which is another one of the things that can be a trigger for type 2 diabetes. We've also seen tooth decay and other costs there really improve. And most importantly, or one of the key factors for me is around pregnancy-related. Gestational diabetes rates have gone down. And so what that means at the end of the day is healthier moms and healthier babies. And specifically in Philadelphia, on our gestational diabetes rates went down. Oh, I have that number right here for you. By, I want to say, I don't have it right here, almost, I think, 45%. And so healthier moms, healthier babies because of this legislation directly tied to it.
Madam Chair, I just got a few more questions. I'll move fast as I can. So one question that I won't ask then, since I only get one, has to do back to the snowball question from Delegate Wells. I used to be assistant manager at a snowball stand, the best snowball stand in the state, One Sweet Moment, on Hamilton Avenue in Baltimore. The way we make snowballs is not purchasing the syrup. We have a big, well, they have a big, literally trash can. You dump the water, you dump the sugar in, you put the little mix in, and like that's how we made it. So I would wonder how that might impact the tax, or if it applies in that circumstance. But my last question to you, Madam Sponsor, is to the budget. And a lot of the challenges in the budget are that we are passing a lot of these costs on to the local jurisdictions in a lot of different ways. And obviously, this is one way that we can not only raise a lot of money, but at the same time, identify where that money came from. So what is your perspective on some sort of a local carve-out? And my part B to that question is, for a portion of it, to stay with the locals is what I'm trying to say. And part B is when we talk about food insecurity, as Delegate Wells mentioned, I could talk about Oliver community. There's no grocery store in 2 miles in any direction. So would you be open to some of that money going towards correcting food insecurity in those places?
100% yes. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, committee members, there are 2 more panels of favorables coming up here. So, exactly. So, we have 2 more panels, and then we also have the unfavorables, okay? And folks do want to go support the speaker at her son's viewing. So, let's just all keep that in mind. I know it's a very important issue, but let's keep that in mind. Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Interesting concept. We often hear about how the unique design of our state puts rural areas up against neighboring businesses and so forth. And I know Delegate Aaron's touched on it, but according to the Google machine, we're the only state, statewide, we'd be the only state that has a sugary beverage tax.
We would be the first.
We would be the first. Probably the only as well, but the reality of it, from Ocean Pines, Maryland, a very populated area in northern Worcester County, 8 miles to Selbyville, Delaware. 8 miles, I could be at a grocery store. Let's say I pick up 6 packs of Coke or Pepsi products, because when you're doing that kind of shopping, you're usually, you're running to the store for milk, eggs, but then once a month or something, you're doing serious shopping. So you run up there, you pick up 6 packs of soda, you pick up a case of Gatorade, and that, according to the tax, that would be like $26.88. We're going to give up $2.70 in sales tax because this is tax, correct? Right now, if I go in the store, a soda is taxed at 6%.
Correct. The sales tax is 6%, yes.
So, it would, if I did this in Maryland, it would cost me $26.88 for the sugar tax, $2.70 for the sales tax. The savings right there, almost $30. Next to the grocery store is the liquor store. So I grab my bottle of bourbon and 2 bottles of wine for my wife. Another $100, 9%. Another $9 I saved. On the way back, the gas station is right before the line into Maryland. I stopped there because gas is always cheaper in Delaware. This is real. This isn't made up. So how much of the fiscal note is considering the loss? And if this is truly successful, the loss is 6% sales tax. Because if we're going to reduce those sugary sales 20-25%, we're losing 6% for every customer in Maryland, not to mention however many part live on our rural edges. I texted my family when we were here saying, hearing a bill, and the first thing my daughter says is, people shop in Delaware and Virginia. It's real. This isn't made up.
I don't discount it.
How much of the fiscal note is accurate? Is this truly reflected in all the other costs and the cost to our Maryland businesses?
So Delegate, thank you for the question. I too live very close to another jurisdiction. My district borders Washington, D.C., which has very different system for taxation in lots of different ways as well. So this is something that I think about a lot when I know, like, oh, my neighbors might go to Virginia or to DC, because it's a very quick drive, right? It's like 20 minutes from my house. You can go to any other jurisdiction. What I will say is that, and I will defer to Dr. Krieger for some of the data on this as well, while Maryland would be the first state to pass it, we have had 8 other municipalities pass similar legislation, and the data has not shown a significant number of people choosing to go outside to buy other beverages or to do their shopping. Now, of course, there might be folks who feel motivated to do that. Others would not, and in the end, you still see relatively stable revenue generation from this particular tax that other local jurisdictions have pursued. But I would love to ask Dr. Krieger if he wants to add a very small amount.
Before we do that, I'll say municipalities have the advantage of public transportation, and a lot of times to go further, that's not the same luxury. Whereas in rural areas, we depend on having transportation. 8 miles each way, 16 miles round trip by the state's 70 cents per mile standard is $11.20. It's not hard to do, you know, so they're real numbers. I love math, and that's why I wanted to throw this
I
out
love it
there.
too, sir. I do. I didn't draft the fiscal note, so I can't specifically speak to whether they considered any potential shopping outside of Maryland that could occur. But I take your point. I mean, I think it is an important one.
Thank you for your answers.
Yes, sir.
Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Shetty, for this big bill. So personally, I don't buy sugary stuff. So I think on one side, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this important issue about the health and then the cost associated with the sugary food or drinks. And I have a question for the professor from University of Washington. And because I just don't want to mix the tax part and the health benefit part, because one side we said we're going to help improve the health dramatically, and then the other side we can see the tax part, the numbers there. But if I look at the report from the really latest one, November 2024, Association of Philadelphia Sweetened Beverage Tax with changes in adult body weight, an interrupted time series analysis. Those are professors from MIT and some other university in Philadelphia. They basically said there's no improvement at all. So this is the latest on Lancet Regional Health. So sweetened beverage tax associated with a large decrease in sugar sweetened beverage sales, but their effects on weight outcome are unclear. So they said there was some limited evidence of decrease in BMI and obesity prevalence in Philadelphia 3 years after beverage tax implementation. Replication of these results is needed. So I wonder, from your research, you mentioned that earlier, are you able to share those findings, kind of really scientific findings that this greatly improved the health for people in Philadelphia?
Dr. Krieger, the question's for you.
Yeah, thank you for that great question, Assembly Member. There's a growing body of evidence looking at the effects of sugary sweetened beverage taxes on weight. And so in Seattle, we've had 3 of them, and they've showed significant decreases in the rate of obesity and BMI in both adults and children. The most recent study that was published a few weeks ago showed a 4.5% decrease in obesity after the tax came out. There are other studies that have looked and compared Philadelphia, for example, adolescents to youth across the rest of the country who live in cities without a sugary drink tax, and again found decreased weight gain among the adolescents in this compared to those who are in non-taxed communities. There are also data, in addition to the weight data, looking at the effects in Philadelphia again on oral health, and particularly in the Medicaid population. There's a decreased rate of cavities, of decayed, missing, and filled teeth in children in Philadelphia compared to matched places outside of Philadelphia without the tax. So I think there's a growing body of evidence, most of which is pointing in the same direction, showing benefits for obesity and oral health. And it's too soon to see the effects on diabetes or heart disease, because you wouldn't expect to see those effects until 10, even 15 years after a tax goes into effect.
Thank you. Would you mind share that with the committee?
Yeah, I'm happy to share those after your meeting today. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, for the last question for this panel, Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this bill, Delegate Shetty. I have a few articles in front of me talking about Coca-Cola and Pepsi's revenue jumps and how they have raised prices, including an article here that says that soft drink companies have been expanding their margins, their revenues have been going up by more than their costs. So I guess my first question is, why is it okay for Coca-Cola and Pepsi to increase their prices? We don't see this level of outrage. That's passed on to consumers. Why is this different?
I think that's an excellent question, Delegate. I have not read the articles, so I can't speak to those specifically, but I think it's pretty widely known that private sector companies can choose how they price their products, and they're responsive to their shareholders. And as shareholders deem they wish more profit, they will respond accordingly. But yeah, I agree. I think from my perspective, this approach is certainly worthy of consideration given some of the points you're making.
I agree. And again, all-time high revenues for Coke and Pepsi, and they're passing costs on to consumers to drive up the revenue. So second question, I'm looking at a piece of testimony here that says this tax places an undue burden on Maryland families, many of whom are already struggling with the rising costs of food, utilities, housing, and transportation. Note that healthcare is not mentioned there. So can we talk a little bit about the costs of, we've talked about the healthcare implications of this, the rising costs of Medicaid, the impacts that diabetes has. Can we just put it into perspective for an individual Maryland family?
Sure. Yeah. So, again, Medicaid costs, housing costs, all of these other costs are sort of non-optional increases that a family might see, right? This is one of the areas, your food budget and how you choose to spend it, whether it's spent on treats or healthier options, is a choice, right? And you will see, and then the data shows that families that have lower incomes or lower food budgets will spend those dollars wisely based upon the resources that they have. I'll tell you this from personal experience, having grown up in poverty. We did not buy a lot of treats because we couldn't afford them. And when we did, it was a splurge, right? And that is how a lot of families see these types of purchases anyway. And so when you increase the prices on, again, sort of like optional products that are treats, people will make choices accordingly, which again is part of why this is really a public health approach to this bill.
Got it. And last question really quick, and I'm a big advocate of free universal breakfast and lunch for students in our state. Right now, we can't afford it under our current budget constraints, right? So this bill right here is the vehicle by which we can get free breakfast and lunch for every kid in the state of Maryland.
Yes, Delegate.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. Delegate Shetty, you may want to check in with your committee. They were looking through, they were voting. They may have done your bills already without you, but.
Okay, they're voting. I will come back after I vote. Okay, thank you.
I will call up the next panel of folks that are supposed to be with us present and then physically, and we do have a handful of virtual folks. Nikki Highsmith-Vernick, Louis Crivelli, and Ellie Colmers. All come up for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and all members of this committee. My name is Nikki Highsmith-Vernick, and I'm President and CEO of the Horizon Foundation. We are Howard County's Community Health Foundation and the largest independent health philanthropy in Maryland. For that reason, I also want to recognize Delegate Feldmark and Delegate Wu. We are pleased to be here with our statewide partners in support of the For Our Kids Act. Sugary drinks have unfortunately become a staple in the American diet, and they are harming marginalized communities the most. The beverage industry actively targets low-income people and communities of color, the very same groups that suffer disproportionately from type 2 diabetes, obesity, heart disease, dental cavities, and other health problems associated with sugary drinks. And just to follow up on the question the delegate asked about the pre-diabetes and diabetes in the state of Maryland, 2.7 million people in Maryland are either pre-diabetic or have diabetes. That's 44% of the adult population. The For Our Kids Act not only is an important public health measure to reduce sugary drink consumption and to fight these chronic diseases, but is intentionally designed to invest the revenue that is raised in communities with lower income to advance equity. You heard much of that in the former panel. The revenue raised through this legislation will be used to directly benefit kids and working families by funding early child care and healthy school meals for all students, a key priority of the Horizon Foundation. So working research of similar taxes that have been enacted elsewhere, you heard from earlier panel, shows that the amount of new tax revenues funding programs targeted towards people with lower incomes was higher than the amount they paid in taxes. So therefore, working families will see a net benefit from this legislation. The Horizon Foundation has worked for over a decade in Howard County to reduce sugary drink consumption, and through our policy work, our media work, and our Howard County Unsweetened campaign, we were able to drive down soda sales by about 30% in our community. But we can and we should do more to change public policy to ensure that everyone can live a healthy and abundant life across the state of Maryland. The For Our Kids Act would make progress towards that goal by improving public health, by reducing sugary drink consumption, and putting money back into the communities hardest hit by sugary drink-related diseases. So I urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ellie Colmers on behalf of SEIU Local 500 and the Maryland State Child Care Association. You've heard me many times this session already talking about the desperate need our state has to expand child care options for our working families. So we are here in support of the For Our Kids Act today because it represents a crucial step forward toward creating a more equitable, accessible, high quality, and sustainable early childhood system in Maryland. You've heard from MSDE that they are currently seeking to freeze the Child Care Scholarship Program, citing a lack of funding, which would prevent 86% of the eligible children and families from accessing that essential aid. This bill represents a creative way to help close that funding gap and keep the program open to all who qualify. This investment in our children's care not only helps working families, but also promotes economic freedom and a healthy economy for all. We can't afford to cut back on essential services like early care and education or fail to address the pressing food insecurity challenges that many working parents face. The For Our Kids Act offers a comprehensive, forward-thinking solution to these problems, ultimately improving the quality of life for Maryland families and ensuring that all children have the opportunity to reach their greatest potential. We urge a favorable report.
Okay, committee, are there any questions for the two at the witness desk? Okay, seeing none for the two of you. We do have a question, hold on.
Sorry,
Deb?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, you said that with the tax, you have seen a decline in consumption of sugary drinks, am I correct?
Sorry, we didn't have a tax in Howard County. Hold on. Sorry.
Hold on. Go ahead, now you can go.
Thank you. We do not have the authority to do a sugary drink tax in Howard County. We had other public policy measures and media campaigns and educational work that reduce consumption.
Okay, in lieu of the tax?
In lieu of a tax.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for either of these two? Okay, thank you both. We will move to is Louis Crivelli here? Okay, that was the last in-person favorable. We will move to virtual witnesses. Dr. Hoops, please, for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Catherine Hoops. I'm a pediatric intensive care physician in Baltimore, and I serve as the vice president of the Maryland chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I'm here also to convey my strong support for HB 1469. So as a physician in an intensive care unit, I take care of some of the sickest kids in our state. And I have taken care of countless children who are severely ill from complications of type 2 diabetes. They have high blood pressure and heart disease, all due to obesity. So indeed, 1 in 5 kids in Maryland and of my patients has obesity. And while certainly there are many contributors to this public health problem, it's clear that consumption of sugary beverages is associated with obesity and its complications. So taxes like the one proposed in HB 1469 are part of a comprehensive public health approach to promoting health. These measures are supported by an abundance of public health research over the last 15 years or more, and are strongly supported by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So multiple studies have shown 5 key health outcomes with sugary beverage taxes that could translate to big gains for Maryland kids. So first, reduce consumption of sugary beverages. But overall, number 2, reduce sugar intake overall. So when people reduce their sugary beverage intake, they're not then replacing them with Delegate Shetty's chocolate cake. Number 3, important reductions in overweight and obesity, even after just 1 year of implementation. 4, better oral health, and 5, improved pregnancy and birth outcomes, including gestational diabetes and infants born small for their gestational age. So in addition to these, investing revenue generated in programs that promote health, including giving kids nutritious meals in school. So the Maryland chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics believe that the benefits of this measure for kids are overwhelming, and I would urge you to find the same. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Joelle Johnson, please, for 2 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Joelle Johnson, and I am a mother of 2 young children, as well as the Deputy Director at the Center for Science in the Public Interest, a DC-based national organization that advocates for science-based nutrition policies, and we're longtime advocates of healthy school meals. CSPI strongly supports the For Our Kids Act, and we are excited to see Maryland potentially become the first state in the country to adopt a statewide sugary beverage tax. You've heard a lot about today about the benefits of taxing sugary beverages, so I'm going to focus a little bit more on why funding healthy school meals for all is a critical public health issue. So there are 3 key reasons that I want to point out. The first is expanding access to healthy school meals will provide economic support for families. Maryland has already recognized the critical role that school meals play. The Maryland Meals for Achievement program allows eligible schools to offer free breakfast in the classroom, and the Maryland Cares for Kids Act of 2018 ensures any child eligible for free and reduced price meals receives a free meal. But even with these policies, current eligibility criteria are leaving too many Maryland children behind, including those from lower and middle class families. Inflation is hurting families' budgets, and many cannot shoulder the cost of school meals right now. Nowhere else in the school day do we require proof of income like we do in the cafeteria. We provide books and transportation regardless of income, and school meals should be treated no differently. Number 2, expanding access to healthy school meals will promote nutrition, food security, and academic performance. There's a systematic review examining free school meals for all policies that found they're positively associated with all of these attributes. Third and final, expanding access to healthy school meals can advance equity. Healthy school meals for all ensure that children who might be on the edges of eligibility or experiencing homelessness do not fall through the cracks. Taxing sugary beverages to fund healthy school meals for all in Maryland is a win-win. Please pass this bill.
Okay, are there any questions for either of these 2 individuals? Okay, thank you both very much for being here. Do we have Lorraine Aricrat or John Deedy virtually? Okay, bring her on in. Okay, Lorraine, can you, oh, there you go. Okay, for 2 minutes, please, Lorraine.
All right, great, thank you. My name is Lorraine Aricad. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst with 1199 SCIU, United Healthcare Workers East. We are the largest healthcare workers union in the nation, representing over 10,000 healthcare workers in long-term care facilities, hospitals, and clinics across Maryland. We are here strongly in support of HB 1469, which would invest in healthy choices for our neighbors and Maryland families. For too long, sugary drink companies have targeted Black and brown communities with ads and promotions for sodas, fruit drinks, and sweet tea products that have been proven to lead to serious health problems. 1199 SEIU knows that investing in preventative health and thriving communities will make sure our healthcare systems are not overburdened with preventable diseases and emergencies, especially when our healthcare workforce crisis is truly understaffed. Raising the prices of these drinks just a little bit can lower how much people drink them, while also putting money into programs that will help our communities thrive. And for those reasons, 1199 SEIU strongly urges a favorable report on HB 1469.
Okay, any questions, committee? Okay, thank you all very much for being here. That concludes the testimony on all the favorables, and we will call the unfavorables up 5 at a time. Marshall Klein, Mike O'Halloran, Sarah Price, Bruce Bariano, and Zane Reinier. Okay, we got an extra seat here. Delbert Griffer. Did I pronounce that wrong? Okay, somebody didn't hop up soon enough, so what's your name?
Delbert.
Okay, you'll be on the next group. Thank you. Okay, can I just, yep, and we'll just work our way down.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Vice Chair and honorable committee members. Sarah Price here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance in strong opposition to the tax that is proposed in this bill. There are no existing state policies to compare this to, and we do believe that this experiment would be highly detrimental to Maryland's consumers, grocery industry, and overall business environment. The closest geographical comparison that we have in Philadelphia shows a drastic drop-off in beverage sales over time. The latest data from the Pennsylvania Food Merchants Association is that beverage sales within the city have decreased by 46.8% since the implementation of the tax there. And the National Institute for Health has data proving that increased cross-border sales are also occurring as a result. In Maryland, shoppers with access to vehicles will be able to travel to nearby communities in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Delaware, and West Virginia to buy their beverages at a lower cost. And we do expect this to result in a transfer of overall household grocery purchases. While members are still crunching the numbers on the expected hit that this will make to them, one chain has shared that they expect an annual impact of at least $13 million. I would remind the committee that profit margins in the grocery industry are about 1 to 3%. The average for a food retailer in 2023 was 1.6%. Additionally, the cost to outfit and open up a new supermarket is about $5 to $7 million. So given the slate of bills that's up for deliberation this year, I don't see Maryland as presenting itself as a very economically viable option for expansion. This bill would not only incentivize customers to leave the state to shop, but also disincentivizes businesses from investing here when they know that they can make more and save more money by locating directly across the border in our neighboring states. So we would urge an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, Vice Chair and the committee. My name is Marshall Klein. I'm the president of Klein ShopRite of Maryland. We own and operate 9 full-service grocery stores in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Harford County. I employ about 1,300 people in the state. We firmly urge unfavorable opinion on this bill from a grocery perspective, purely a grocery perspective. This is just a revenue generation bill. I was on the sidelines to see what happened in Philadelphia, and while you did see consumption go down in the city, you saw consumption drastically increase over the city line. There has been no direct link to healthier options directly from this bill. All you did was shift people from where you tax to where you didn't tax. This bill will take $500 million out of the grocery budgets of Marylanders. It will make it harder for grocery stores to continue to operate. It will significantly impact the ability to address food desert issues. I have 2 stores in urban food deserts. It's incredibly difficult to operate these stores in general. What this really does to those consumers, it takes apple juice, which is $1.99, and makes it $3.27. It takes iced tea that we sell for $2.99 and makes it $5.50 a gallon. That's what the real effect is. Yes, it's called the soda bill. 30% plus of what we sell in liquid beverage will be subject to this tax. If things have 1 extra gram of added sugar, low sugar, artificial sweetener, it's subject to this tax. This is not a soda bill. This is a tax on people that don't have any other options. This is a group of progressive legislators trying to get a revenue option and tell people what they should and what they shouldn't drink and how they shouldn't live. And what that's going to do is take money out of the mouths of these families and impact their ability to continue to shop and provide for their families by purchasing other healthy foods. Thank you very much, and I urge an unfavorable consideration of this bill.
I know it's a tough issue, but we all gotta just remain calm. You did do a great job, so. Next, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Zane Rainier. I'm a member of the Teamsters Local 570. I'm a member of the Teamsters Local 570, and I'm a sales rep and a delivery driver for Pepsi at Havity Grace. I believe that if this bill passes, my livelihood and the livelihood of many other workers in Maryland, including the beverage companies, the gas stations, the grocery stores, and the restaurants, it's all going to be affected. I've been at Pepsi for 2.5 years. I enjoy my job, and it has helped set me up for a great career and a good future for myself. I'm 23 years old. I'm at a very pivotal stage of my life. I'm getting married in June. I'm saving up money for a house. I don't want to see this bill have an effect on my paycheck if the cost of soda keeps going up. I want to have a good future set up for myself, and I'm worried that this is going to have an effect on my future. That's going to impact my ability to be a good husband, a good father in the future, and my ability to be a homeowner. So I'm asking you to consider the consequences of this legislation for hundreds of thousands of young Marylanders, including myself. Thank you.
And congratulations on getting married, and don't listen to some of these people's advice on
Thank you.
You're still young and hopeful.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm not so young and not so hopeful anymore myself, but good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the House Ways and Means Committee. For the record, my name is Mike O'Halloran. I'm here today representing the Mid-Atlantic Petroleum Distributors Association, which in addition to energy marketers also represents convenience stores. And convenience stores, like our friends in the larger retail space, will be at a disadvantage if this bill were to pass, not just from a cross-border sales perspective, but also from a purchasing power perspective. You know, our convenience stores, by and large, don't have the same purchasing power as, you know, some of the larger format retail locations. So I think it'll hit especially hard on our consumers and may drive some of those consumers elsewhere. Perhaps to the membership clubs, you know, in other states where this tax isn't levied. So that is the concern, and obviously we echo the rest of the concerns that our friends in the retail space have iterated today. So with that, I'll hopefully give back another minute plus and respectfully request an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Bruce Bariano. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Candy Tobacco Wholesalers. We distribute a great deal of these products to the retail stores. This bill would be a continuation of the image that the state of Maryland has, is that they are very anti-business. This is a very anti-business piece of legislation. You know, a lot of people complain, how do we get businesses here? How do we get corporations here? How do we really improve our business and our climate here in the state of Maryland? This is misguided legislation. Unfortunately, what people don't talk about, and I believe this in my heart and soul, is what is the role and function of the parents? Let's not talk about taxes. Let's talk about the parents of these children, and they're raising children. You have obligations when you raise children and you have children. And if they're not eating right and they're not eating healthy, then do something about it as a parent. And that, unfortunately, if you listen to the proponents of the bills, the parents have no obligations or no role in this whole thing. A bill like this is really not good for the state of Maryland. Businesses are going to leave. People are going to leave. It's not the way to solve our financial problems in this state. I would urge an unfavorable report. I know my clients as distributors, similar to the retailers you heard from, they're going to lose employees. They're going to lose business. And they're just going to go elsewhere to friendlier states. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have some questions, so we'll start with Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for being here today. And this question is from Mr. Klein, and thank you for being here. And we're very lucky in Harford County to have a locally owned and operated grocery store chain that invests back in our community. And a couple points I want you, if you wouldn't mind, expand upon, talking about how you've tried to, maintain stores in some of the food deserts and some of the areas a little more challenging to have a grocery store. Could you talk about more specifically how a bill like this, especially in addition to all the laws we passed in a few years, would make it difficult for you to still be open in some of these areas where we desperately need grocery stores?
Sure, I think that this is a little bit different than Philadelphia in that it's statewide. So in Harford County and in other areas you heard a little bit, there will be people leaving the state to shop. In areas like Baltimore City, where I operate in Northwest Baltimore, where we love being in Howard Park, where transportation options don't really exist, there will be money taken out of people's paychecks for food. And that means if every dollar paid in tax is less dollars in the store, and the less dollars there are in the store, it reduces the store's viability. And the ability to open up additional stores in urban food deserts and even rural food deserts go down. Because quite frankly, when you take $500 million out of food consumption budgets, there's $500 million less in revenue that stores have to use to operate. So it just makes everything harder. In addition to the environmental legislation, all the other stuff I don't want to get into because that's not the purview of this bill, it just makes it harder.
And my next question, and you got into the information a little bit, but if you wouldn't mind breaking down a little more, you talked about like apple juice, right? So like 100% apple juice wouldn't be taxed on this, but it's like $3.29 a package. But
100% apple juice is more expensive because it's 100% juice. It's about $3 a little, depends where you shop. If you shop at ShopRite, a little bit cheaper, right? So a little bit cheaper. Say $3 for 64 ounces. If you buy private label apple juice that is sweetened, we sell it for $1.99 every day. That product is now going to be, there's another 2 cents an ounce, 68 ounces, it'll be $3.27. So it just increases the cost. For the family that was buying that product, there's another $1.27 coming out of their check to purchase that item. And if they trade it to a 100% juice option, the $1.70, the $1.27 is still coming out of their check. Same thing with orange juice, same thing with iced tea, same thing with Gatorade, same thing with low sugar lemonade. It's all the same.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Buckle.
And, Mr. Klein, you're kind of going to be, I'm going to ask a question again of you, because you're so relevant in the industry. No offense to all the other people up there that are very knowledgeable about it. You live and breathe it on a day-to-day basis. I'm getting from what your statements are that, I asked the delegate, who's the bill sponsor, is a wonderful person, I think, has good faith reasons for doing the bill. But we're correct in saying this isn't just about soda. This includes anything that has, 1 gram of an enhanced or additive sugar or non-nutrient substance. I was told that's a lot of your juices, things that people would buy for their kids that they think is a little bit healthy than getting them soda. They're getting them something they think is a little bit healthier and their kids will drink. I have an 8-year-old little boy. He won't just drink water all the time. Sometimes he's like, no, I want some juice, or something else. This is going to apply to a wide variety of products in your store. Is that fair to say?
I am by no means a billologist, but I fully believe that it will. I mean, yes, 100%, yes. The short answer is yes. There's certain things that are excluded. Milk that is made from both animal and plant would be excluded. I don't know if that applies to like creamers. Certainly it applies to High C, Gatorade, Capri Sun. Most of my liquid beverage category, other than water.
That's my son's beverage of choice. You hit it right there, Capri Sun. The other question I had for you, and I think it's kind of assumed in your answers, and we had this discussion with the original panel. As an operator of grocery stores, what's roughly, without giving away any trade secrets, I don't want to delve into your income tax returns, but what's roughly your profit margin when you operate a grocery store?
Sarah was very accurate. It's 1 to 2%.
1 to 2%. So would it even be feasible for you if a bill like this was passed on this level of product in your store to just, hey, I'll just eat the costs? Or one of the individuals testified that in Philadelphia they passed around about 70% of the costs and ate 30%. Would that just make it, fiscally not feasible for you to operate some of your stores?
In Philadelphia, what happened, like the real thing that happened, was they were losing so much volume, they had to eat the cost. Because they were losing so much volume to stores outside the city.
Right.
So competitive pressures made them eat the cost. It almost bankrupted 3 companies that I'm aware of.
Yeah. So for you, if you said, well, gee,
there's not enough margin.
It's going up $1.50, $1.25. I'll just keep it at the same price, or I'll only raise my cost 25 cents. you're basically losing money to be in business with that product. Is that fair to say?
Correct. And in my business, it's all out of 100. So if my gross margin goes down 50 basis points, I don't have another 50 basis points somewhere else.
Right. Thank you.
Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just really quick on that point that was being made, what happens if the prices are raised by Coca-Cola or Pepsi? Have the prices gone up that you've been paying for these products? Because I'm seeing reports that they have.
That is correct. They've gone up in much respect because the cost structure of every single business that operates in this country, certainly in this state, has increased.
Well, sorry, their revenues have increased significantly as well. So it's not just that their costs have gone up, their revenues, their margins are increasing. So my question is, why is it different when they raise costs to boost their revenues than when we try to set this 2-cent per ounce tax? Why is that a different situation for you?
I would say that the difference in the situation, and certainly, hey, the Coke and Pepsi and Canada Dry people, I don't like it when you raise your costs either. It's bad for business. Like, tamp it down. I'm just saying, from my business, when you're increasing the consumer cost of these items, those are food dollars that are taken out of our state, and they go to the state. So I don't care whether it's Pepsi or Coke raising the cost. I don't care if it's the state of Maryland raising the cost. I care that the customers that I am trying to serve have to pay more for food, which means they will then consume less food. And that impacts my overall business. So yes, they've raised costs. There's a variety of reasons for that. I don't run those companies. I don't make those decisions. I have to pass that cost through to my consumers. And because of that, we have seen consumers are buying less food because food costs more. And people are trading down to private label, and national brands are losing share. And when you tax everything, you're going to just see more of that. We're going to see more food insecurity. And if you don't have kids that are part of a school lunch program, and hey, I'm all about providing healthy options for children in school. It is really, really, really important. I cannot overstate the health benefits of that. You're taking away money from people that are trying to feed their families.
Got it. So I've made this point before. I'll make it one more time and then I'm done. When we're looking at this tax, it's to pay for children in schools to have free lunch, free breakfast, free lunch, to address the childcare constraints that we have in our state. Whereas when Coca-Cola or Pepsi raise the cost, it's to benefit shareholders and boost their revenue. So I do want to say that there is a very clear difference between those two situations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Delegate Hornberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the young man that works at the Havre de Grace facility, I'm in Cecil County. I have a number of constituents travel across the bridge to work at the Pepsi bottling place there. We've already heard from both sides that there are going to be less sales. I think that's universally agreed upon. And less sales means less revenues. And less revenues means layoffs at your facility impacting my district. Has there been any math done on how many folks would get laid off, how many people would lose their job at a local level in Havre de Grace? It's got to be more than zero.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard for me to say because I'm just, I'm just the low man on the totem pole, the common man. But I mean, you can only assume that, if the company's bringing in less money, at some point, you can't, if you're like I said, I guess you could say if you were to take a 30% loss in sales and revenue, wouldn't you have to cut your workforce by 30%?
I think that's fair to say.
Counter that cost?
Okay, or thank you. And thank you for making the trip down here today, taking the day off work.
Oh, appreciate absolutely.
That. Delegate Feldmark.
So my question is, I guess, likely for Mr. Klein, but for others as well. We've heard sort of disputing versions of the research on what has happened in other places where this has been done. We've heard that it did not, we didn't see a migration of shopping over the line. We've heard that we did see a migration of shopping over the line, right? We've got different studies. I don't have the studies. I'm not gonna dispute or get into that debate. I haven't heard anyone dispute the negative health impacts of the level of sugar consumption that we see in our kids. Do any of you dispute that
information?
If this is the question, is sugar bad?
The question is, does consumption of high levels of sugar, largely from sugary sweetened beverages, contribute to a host of chronic diseases and public health issues for our children and families throughout Maryland?
I'm not a medical expert. I am not qualified to comment on that.
Does anyone on this panel dispute the testimony that we heard earlier on that topic?
I would dispute this one aspect of it.
Okay.
The aspect of it is that I think we are focusing on sugary beverages when, and I don't want to give anybody ideas, like we're not taxing bags of sugar that I sell, 4-pound bags of sugar. We're not taxing Frosted Flakes, have a lot of sugar in them. So like to say that it's all because of the sugary beverages, I would dispute the fact that it is somehow the soda manufacturer's fault. That's all I would dispute.
Well,
Okay, we're going to have to ask you to leave if that continues.
Madam Chair, may I continue with the follow-up? Thank you. You know, I think the bill sponsor made a very clear point about how sugar consumption in sugary beverages is not noticed as much as when you use that bag of sugar to bake cookies and cakes and the other treats that she showed us that are the same amount of sugar, right? Sugary beverages, I think the danger that we're talking about is how easily large quantities of sugar are consumed without even noticing it, right? It doesn't even fill you up. And so I think that's the difference. Does anyone, I mean, that's certainly what we heard from the bill sponsor. Does anyone have any data or research to counter that point?
Delegate Philmark, I'll admit, I don't have any such data, whether it's true or not true. And I'm not trying to be argumentative with you, but particularly sodas and other kind of drinks, you know, you go in the food aisles, they're very clear. You can buy non-sugary or sugary. I mean, in other words, when you pick up the can or the bottles or the cartons or what have you, know whether you're getting one that is zero sugar or is not. So I think it's very evident by just the shopping, you know, situation. And to the extent if there are, and I'm not saying there aren't, you know, problems with the consumption of sugar among kids. I'm not trying to repeat my testimony, but bring the parents in, bring in the people that are with those children on a regular basis that can be helpful to solve this problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem.
I think some of the manufacturers probably wouldn't want to see that happen, but I appreciate your response. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Klein, I've been to your store a lot. It's a pretty good store. Got some of the best produce in West Baltimore.
Thank you.
My question, though, really has to do with this notion that was purported that this tax would increase food insecurity. You know, I think the challenge that I have with that statement is that I see the food insecurity exist even in places it shouldn't exist. A specific example is right next to Morgan State, we have a Lido that just opened. It took us so long to find a supermarket to go into that space. The challenge, though, is not that that's a space of high crime. We're talking about next door to Morgan State University. We're talking about Northwood, a neighborhood of middle-class Black community where there is very, very low vacancy. And yet, the struggle to find a store was there. My argument is that much of the food insecurity we see is not a matter of margin always. It is a matter of margin to an extent, but it's absolutely a matter of racism. And I want to put that on the record today because it's challenging to consistently hear the scare tactic, but my people live that every day in my community. So that being said, I also want to make a quick mention, and here's where my question is, Madam Chair, and I'll get off the mic because I took a lot earlier. Don't roll your eyes at me, Madam Chair. Mr. Bariani, you mentioned bringing in the parents. I think the challenge with that piece is that so many of our students in Baltimore are riding MTA buses to school. They are stopping at the stores. In our stores in East Baltimore and Oliver community and New Broadway East, where there's no supermarket for 2 miles in each direction, the stores they're going to are the tobacco shops, they are the 7-Elevens, they're the gas stations. This is where they're getting their whatever nurturing that they're getting if they're not getting it from home. And the products that are in those stores are the sodas. Those sodas directly impact their teeth and all of the things that you heard earlier. And these problems persist more so in our communities than anywhere else. So I guess isn't that so that these students, that parents aren't always there. They're not going to always have an impact. They're not going to always be able to stop bad choices when it comes to what people purchase. And I'll leave it at that. Isn't that so? I don't know if I need an answer though.
It's rhetorical. Okay, last question, Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I think this question is probably for Ms. Price or Mr. Marzik, because I think in both of your testimonies, you spoke to the alleged economic impacts if this proposal would move forward. And I'm just hoping you can elaborate what evidence you have to back the claims that you made.
Well, we know that it resulted in a direct decrease in sales of these products in Philadelphia. We know that it resulted in cross-border sales, so purchases made outside the city in order to avoid the tax. Obviously, a statewide tax is different geographically. People can't, when this came up in Baltimore City, people talked about just going to the county to purchase. In this situation, grew up in Cumberland. If I wanted to leave Cumberland to make a purchase at the next available grocery store, I'd have to drive 40 minutes to the Walmart in Kaiser. But what this could also do as a result is incentivize a grocery store to build a new location 20 minutes away in Fort Ashby, West Virginia, to incentivize people to go to that store instead of building a new location in Allegheny County. So we are concerned about the overall impact to the business climate in Maryland, to the economic viability of opening here, and the way that we try to attract those new businesses.
Okay, so I want to drill down on, I think, the second thing you said about the supposed cross-border sales in Philadelphia. Is there a study, like where does that particularly come from?
I could speak to that directly. I have seen the actual sales from the stores in Philadelphia, so I don't have a study because I have the actual sales of the stores in the outside ring of Philadelphia. I have the sales of the stores that are ShopRite stores that were directly over the line. And I mean, I'm under oath, whatever under oath you want me to be on. 15% top line sale decline, 12 to 20% top line sale increase outside of the city. It's not a study, it's just, this is what happened in 2017, 2018.
All right, I would respectfully push back a bit. I'll say I am a scientist by training. I've published papers in peer-reviewed journals, and unless things are subject to that rigorous scientific debate, and also whether or not it's disclosed, whether or not the industry is funding a particular, we're going to be very generous with the term study here, what was just being talked about, I'm a little skeptical. So, I mean, if the opponents can provide follow-up and provide specific information, I think that'd be helpful. But we heard from the proponents, published papers to supporting what they were testifying to.
We can follow up offline. I can pull the NIH report that I found that did have to account for cross-border sales. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
The next group of individuals, Delbert Riffer, Tiffany Harvey, Grant Connolly, John Pica, and we should have one virtual, and then that should be everyone. John Dede may or may not still be with us. Okay, who would like to go first?
Me first? I'll go first. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee, as well as Economic Matters Committee, thank you for the opportunity to be before you today. My name is Tiffany Harvey, and I have the pleasure of representing the Maryland, Delaware, and DC Beverage Association. And I want to take a minute, because I know some folks have to leave shortly, and I just want to acknowledge who those folks are who've taken their afternoon to spend it with you, because this issue is so important. The Maryland, DC, and Delaware Beverage Association, we represent approximately 3,800 employees across the state of Maryland, making up 12 counties, facilities. There's 28 facilities. So if those folks that have been here all afternoon could just stand very briefly so the committee members can see you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you. So those folks are here today because of the concern that they have, because of what's come out of like a city like Philadelphia and what they saw there. So you have the testimony, we've submitted written testimony. So I'm gonna just kind of talk about, highlight a couple of things outside of the association and what we're doing. These folks are part of the community. They show up for you in ways, they live in our communities, and they are concerned about what the impact of this bill is, right? So we're talking about, you've heard from an employer, there's another employer that we're here, that's here to testify to you. You've heard from employees, you've heard from a grocer about the direct impact of this tax and what that means to them and their bottom line. But beyond that, I think what we want to talk about is this bill, because it keeps getting talked about as soda. This is not a bill that just is soda, right? And these companies voluntarily, over the course of a few years, now their products, 60% of the products they produce will be impacted by this, right? So they have low sugar, zero sugar, diet products, they have full soda recount, they have smaller sizes. There are over 600 SKU numbers, different products in the state of Maryland for sale for retail that would be impacted by this tax. That's what we're talking about. This is protein drinks, sorry. And with that, Madam Chair, we would urge an unfavorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Grant Connolly. I'm the owner and operator of the Pepsi-Cola bottling company in Havre de Grace, Maryland. My family has served the Maryland community for 70 years. I have 120 employees in my organizations, serving the marketplace in sales, delivery, warehousing, trucking, vending, administrative, mechanical, and merchandising. Most folks don't realize just how deep our industry reaches and how this bill will impact Marylanders. If you pass this bill, we're looking at a 35% reduction in sales. That's going to translate to a 25% reduction of my workforce. There are 3,800 jobs in the state of Maryland directly tied to our beverage facilities. I ask you, are you prepared to tell 950 families they're out of a job tomorrow? I don't want to. This also doesn't include all the countless jobs which rely on the support of the beverage industry, production facilities, trucking, IT, finance, raw material manufacturing, retail stores, guys, the list goes on. I want you to know, I'm not big Pepsi here. I'm not big soda. I'm Grant Connolly, an independently owned Pepsi franchise. I represent and provide a career path for the members of my community to earn an income to provide for their family. This bill jeopardizes years of work the women and men of my company and all the other companies in the state of Maryland have put in to building their careers and providing for their families. Two of my men showed up here today. You heard from one already, because they support this message. We invest and support our communities. Maryland has claimed to support business, yet continually makes it more and more difficult for me to survive, thrive, and grow. That's my commitment to my community, to grow my business, provide a pathway for success for everybody within my community. That's my commitment to the state. That's my commitment to my community.
Good afternoon. My name is Delbert Griffith, and I'm with the Teamsters Local 570 and Pepsi-Cola Bottling Company of Havre de Grace. I've been with Pepsi for the past 14 years, and right now I'm in sales. And as a commission employee, if this bill were to go through, I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. With the rising cost of goods, water, energy, food, housing, just everything, I literally wouldn't be able to make it month to month. And my wife and I have been working on a goal to become debt-free over the past 4 to 5 years. And if this bill goes through, we're gonna have to kind of scratch that goal and possibly go farther into debt just to make it month to month. Now, outside of Pepsi, I am a BJJ or a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach. I coach strength training classes. I'm a nutrition coach, and I help people make changes in their lives every day. If this bill goes through, that opportunity that I have to do that kind of goes out the window because I'm going to have to pick up a second job or possibly find a new career field. So I would urge you to not pass this bill. And that's it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, John Pica on behalf of Royal Farms. Royal Farms has 180 stores in Maryland and employs 4,000 individuals. Back in the 70s, I have a cousin named Frank, and he is a dentist, and he has 5 kids, and he would not allow his kids to have any sugar in what they ate or what they drank. And you can guess what happened to those kids. They had perfect teeth. They had perfect smiles. That's because of good parenting. They had choices to make, and it's the same argument that Mr. Barriano made earlier. It's about the choices we make. Today, I eat unhealthy food, and my kids holler at me for the 3 orders of Scrapple I have every morning. Kids know more today about nutrition than we ever knew as young kids. But take a look at what Cook County did. In August of 2017, Cook County enacted a tax on sugar of only 1 cent per ounce. That was August of 2017. 3 months later, they repealed the law, and it was gone at the end of November in 2017 because of the effect it had on business and the jobs that were lost and the sales that decreased in Cook County in Illinois and Chicago and the increase in sales. So there was no net difference in sugar consumption. It just depressed the sales in one area and increased them in another. This bill is only going to hurt businesses that employ your constituents and will result in a loss of a lot of jobs. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I think there was one person online. Are they still with us? No? Okay, so we'll just have questions. This is the last panel. Delegate Buckle.
Ms. Harvey, you talk a lot about, and I think your industry provided us in your testimony, where these jobs are. It looks like they're in about 12, 13 counties. You know, I'm from Cumberland. We have 2. We have a Pepsi and a Coke distributor right there in downtown Cumberland. I actually grew up with a young lady whose family owned the business, much like the gentleman to your right. They were there for 100 years or so operating these types of businesses. They're very influential. What basis, and you've testified about it, if we impose these types of very significant taxes, we've walked through the math, nobody got their calculators out. I think everybody agrees the math is pretty much right. They're very high raises of the costs for these products, and they do have an effect on their consumption. What kind of estimates does your association have of what probable job losses would be? You know, we're in a phase here. I hate to have government policies take people's jobs away. And it's ecumenical. It's public sector, private sector. If we do something as government officials that directly leads to job loss, we're accountable for that. And so where do you have like a rough estimate of, do most of your members think, hey, we're going to have to cut certain percentages of our workforce if this goes through?
So we don't currently have an actual estimate of what the job loss would look like, because I think it will depend on how it impacts the different companies that are represented and their sales, et cetera, across the state. But what we do have are the stories and the folks that actually serve in some of the other places like Philadelphia who have seen job loss. So we have the testimony, and we've submitted testimony from some like Teamsters, right, who talk about some of what they've seen in these job loss. And I think you all know, and especially those of you who have facilities in your district, folks are telling you the stories of what they've seen with job loss. And you hear from folks like Grant or folks like Mr. Klein who know what's happened in other places where they've done something similar and they've seen job loss there. Yeah. So that's where we are. And if we do have some additional information with regard to estimates that we get before you all are out, we'll share that with you.
And just briefly, Mr. Pica, so you did the research, as I know you love to stay up late at night and do research, I'm sure. But you actually found that, so Chicago, basically, Cook County, Greater Chicagoland, yes, they did this, they tried it. Chicago's a pretty progressive jurisdiction by most estimations, and they found out pretty quickly it was causing negative economic impacts that outweighed any value it had and stopped it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, they repealed it 3 months after they passed it. It was August 2017, and the law was repealed in November 2017. And that was only a 1 cent. Yeah. Per ounce tax.
Didn't former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg do something like this too? Didn't he have a large drink tax for a very brief period of time in New York City that also went away pretty quickly?
I did not do that research, but I think he attempted that.
See, I was staying up later than you last night, Mr. Pica. I got you on that. But thank you. So there are other jurisdictions that have tried this and then have found that it doesn't work and it had a negative impact and they stopped it. But I appreciate it.
Okay, the Vice Chair.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to this panel. I know several colleagues have mentioned bottling companies or distributors in their district, and I am proud to have a Coca-Cola bottling company in District 20. And not only do I have a Coca-Cola bottling company in District 20, but it's one of the highest producing in the Northeast region. So colleagues, the chances are if you have a Coca-Cola product that is bottled, there's a high chance that it was bottled in my district. And in visiting that bottling company and the conveyor belt and seeing how all of it is produced, I got a chance to interact with a lot of the workers there who are extremely diverse. They're very reflective of my district and the community in White Oak. And part of my concern, in addition to the other concern that I raised earlier about this bill, is the impact on the workers there, who a lot of them have been there for at least 15 years and who are really proud of the job that they do and the work that they do in this region. So I wanted to unpack further the impact when it comes to workers if this bill were to be implemented.
Great. Grant, would you like to speak?
Yeah. So simple economics. I need to continue investing each year, both into my infrastructure as well as my employees. Simply put, to stay in business for another generation. To kind of put it in perspective, I just made an $8 million expansion right next door to me. I don't own it though, Sandy Springs owns it. I'm just paying them back for it over the next 20 years. So in order to maintain that level of investment and that level of job growth, because this is going to add another 100 jobs to Harford County across the next 5 to 10 years, I need to be able to maintain my margins. If I'm unable to do that, I still have bills to pay. But if I'm unable to maintain my return, we do have to see a reduction in our workforce. Or I see a reduction in compensations to the existing workforce. That's not going to go over very well, and I can guarantee you it's not going to go over with the Teamsters either. I'm not willing to put up that fight. So in order for us to maintain our investment into our employees, we will see a job reduction. I'm forecasting 25%. Go ahead. Okay. Did I answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Delegate Roberson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity, and just want to say that I want to push back on Delegate Wilkins that I think my Coca-Cola plant might be more production. But nonetheless, I just want to run through these quickly because there's multiple things in this bill that are happening. And so one, on the health point, am I correct that the consumption of the sugary drinks in your product line has gone down over the years? That is
correct.
And what is increasing in the product line?
Alternative beverages.
Thank you. Would that be the sugary ones or not?
Combination.
Okay, thank you. And then secondly, I've noticed as well, we've talked about, one of my colleagues mentioned the jobs. In business, it is important to be profitable, am I correct?
Yes.
And then through that profitability, you're able to hire more employees, am I correct?
Through, yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, from the perspective if you have growth. Yes.
Okay, the growth is what we're searching for as we grow businesses in Maryland, am I correct? And you are Maryland-based, correct?
Yes, sir. Havre de Grace.
Thank you, appreciate that. And with the decline in these sugary drinks that we've seen and other product lines, I've also noticed that your prices have gone up. With the prices increasing, has consumption gone down?
So sales have been impacted, yes. So I think that leads to consumption has been reduced.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's all my, and have you seen, sorry, last one, Madam Chair. Is there data that you've seen as far as the impact in Pennsylvania, just as outside of, I know it was mentioned before that these individuals in Pennsylvania are going outside of the city to go purchase these products, but has the actual consumption from it? Because I know the goal, I think, of the bill is to actually help healthy impacts, that individuals are actually making healthier choices, but it seems as though, if I'm correct, that there's continuing to consume the same amount of product even with the tax. Am I correct?
So, and I'm gonna speak anecdotally from what, from what the information that we have from kind of preparing after the bill was introduced. It is my understanding that consumption went down in Philadelphia because folks went elsewhere. And so there were some companies that do have a presence in Maryland who also serve in Philadelphia that did see consumption go down, but I think that was because folks went elsewhere.
Well, sales in Philadelphia went down. Consumption would have retained the same level.
Got it. The sales went down because they were going elsewhere to purchase these, is what I'm trying to say. So it has not had the health impact that they were looking for.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Delegate Feldmark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for your testimony. I wanted to kind of touch on a couple of points. Mr. Pica, I think you echoed Mr. Bariano's point about looking for better parenting as we are concerned about the levels of sugar that our youth are consuming. And I think that's an acknowledgement that it is problematic, right? That there are better choices to make, but you would like to see those choices encouraged by parenting as opposed to economic incentives or disincentives. Is that
Yeah, I mean, it's
fair?
up to each family to educate their children, but my children educate me, quite frankly. So we hit a certain age and it reverses.
Okay. And so, and I think, you know, Ms. Harvey, you made the point, I think several people made the point, that folks are sort of picturing the bill sponsor's big gulp, right? And that full sugar soda, but that this actually applies much more broadly, right? To low sugar drinks and even diet sodas or artificially sweetened beverages. So my question is, if this were more focused on actual sugar content and sort of restricted to some sort of grams of sugar per ounce or something like that, would your objection be less?
Well, I think your desire for the revenue might be less, because if you take the 600 impacted SKUs and reduce it significantly, then I think if you're using this to build revenue to fund the healthy, you know, the new established schools and healthy meals, then if it's a non-lapsing fund, it might not have sustainability.
And I guess that's my point, is this is not just about revenue, right? This is actually about, I believe the sponsor's intention is absolutely about public health, right? And recognizing that we have a problem with our youth consuming too much sugar and consuming large quantities of sugar unknowingly with sugary sweetened beverages, right? So if we separate the revenue from the public health issue, I guess I'm wondering if that were more focused, would you object less strongly or not?
Well, I don't know, less strongly. I think we'd have to see whatever you all put forward, right? But I think at the end of the day, the products that the industry and their goal is to make sure that they have something that their consumers want. And consumers have indicated they want low sugar, zero sugar, additional options. So 60% of their products now reflect what the market is asking for. And they've done that voluntarily, right? And so I guess that would be my answer to you, right? Is they're making what folks are asking them to make. And so I think people are making better choices from a sugar perspective, right? If that's what your question is. I think people are doing that. But this bill captures the better choice options as well.
Right, and I appreciated that point in your testimony, so that's why I was asking, you know, if this were narrowed, would that address at least some of your concerns?
We would be happy to have that conversation with you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much. That concludes the hearing for House Bill 1469, and that concludes the bill hearings for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.